Welcome everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Service Delegated Committee. Before we commence this meeting, I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent. My name is Councillor Rob Baillieu and I chair this committee. I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors. Seated to my left at the horseshoe table in the council chamber are Councillors Shima Ibuki, Councillor Michael Nolan and Councillor Felicity Sinfield. On the opposite side we have Councillor Victor Franco, our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith, Councillor Sophie Tawney, our Mayor, Councillor John Friend Pereira, and on the screen behind me, Councillor Chris Pattis. I also acknowledge our CEO, Mr. Philip Storer to my right, and our Manager Governance and Legal, Mr. Brian Wee to my left. There are other officers in attendance tonight, and they will be introduced as they present their reports. The purpose of the Service Delegated Committee is to deal with issues relating to the provision of human and physical services and Council's infrastructure. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer. I'll then call you one by one to come forward and address Council. I will ask speakers to sit at the top of the horseshoe table, and I'll invite those against the officer's recommendation to speak first, followed by those in favour. When making a submission, you are requested to present your viewpoint clearly and concisely on why you agree or disagree with the proposal. You may suggest an alternative approach which will satisfy your concerns. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues. There is a limit of 2 minutes for each speaker. At the 1.5 minute mark, I will ring a bell which will indicate you have 30 seconds remaining and you'll need to conclude your presentation. After you've spoken, please remain at the table while I ask if any councillor has a question for you. For those in the gallery this evening, I would like to take this opportunity to remind you to extend due courtesy and respect to each other and to the committee as a whole. This includes remaining quiet while others are addressing the meeting and not disrupting the decision-making process of the committee. And just to finish, I would like to encourage all submitters, officers and councillors to speak directly into the microphone. This will ensure that everyone can hear clearly the discussion. We'll now move to apologies. Ms. Ritchie, are there any apologies for this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, there is Councillor Hollingsworth and Councillor Gold.
Fantastic. We'll now move to the adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the Service Delegated Committee meetings held on 14 July 2025. Councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt and confirm the minutes? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Happy to do that, Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ibuki.
Happy to second.
Councillors, is anyone opposed? There is none. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We'll now move to declarations of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officer. Councillors and council officers, are there any conflicts of interest that you wish to foreshadow for the matters on the agenda tonight? There are none. We will now move to item 4.1, Officer Report on the contract number 2025/10, Willsmere Park Surface Improvement Works, and David Shepherd will present this item. He is our Manager, Environmental Sustainability and Open Space.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to consider the award of contract 2025/11 for the renewal of the playing surface at Willsmere Park. This is the third of 3 grounds to be reconstructed this coming summer, which, along with our ongoing maintenance and renovation programs, will have our grounds in excellent condition for community sport. The works here include demolition of the playing surface, bulk earthworks, installation of new irrigation and drainage systems, a synthetic cricket pitch, soccer goals and resurfacing works. The soccer club and football club will have their pre-season training accommodated elsewhere in Burundara, and the cricket club will be supported with an alternative playing venue while these works are completed. The works will commence in September, with the ground reopening in late March or early April 2026. We received a number of high quality submissions for these works, and after a thorough evaluation process, the recommendation is to award to Victorian Sports Group, as shown on the screen. I commend the officer recommendation to you.
We will now move to public submissions. There are no public submitters on this item, so we will cease public submissions and we'll move instead to councillors. Are there any questions for the officers? Councillor Nolan.
Thanks to the officers for preparation of the report and all the works before this. Just interested in it's a lot of money, obviously, and could you care to comment on how many years we expect the service life for this resurface before we would anticipate having to do another one?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, our typical lifespan for our sports grounds is around 25 to 30 years, so we wouldn't expect to need to go back to this ground until that sort of time frame.
Thank you.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to officers. I'm interested in, when undertaking these kind of works, whether we might consider them as helping us to mitigate inclement weather conditions arising from climate action, and how that's significant in the undertaking of this contract.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Over time, the design of sports grounds has changed to adapt to our changing climate as well. The grounds that we build now are quite different to the grounds that we built 20 years ago, in that the drainage systems are typically much more advanced. The soil types and the drainage profiles are set up so that they can deal with high intensity rainfall events and dry the grounds out quickly so that the ground can remain in a good usable condition, which also has the benefit of obviously moving water through our system much more quickly than was the way in the past.
Councillors, are there any final questions for the officers? There are none. Councillors, I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Nolan?
Happy to move the officer's recommendation be accepted.
Is anyone prepared to second? Councillor Osborne-Smith?
Yeah, so second, thanks, Chair.
To assist the mover, is anyone opposed? There is none. Councillor Nolan, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, thank you. I am heartened to see this resurface go ahead. We had the pavilion upgrade expansion. That opening was about 3 weeks ago down at Willsmere Park. This park is getting increased use now with 2 soccer ovals. This refurbish will also enable cricket in the summer with a new cricket pitch in the middle. And this will allow the soccer teams in particular in winter to put a lot more teams on across weekends and through training. So we really will increase the activity and the amount of training and playing on this ground. So I've spoken to officers and in fact the couple of people down at the sporting clubs about this. So yeah, very positive. Happy to recommend it be accepted.
And Councillor Osborne-Smith, do you wish to speak to the motion as the seconder?
No need, thank you, Chair.
Do any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? There are none. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We'll now move to item 4.2, an update to the nature strip planting guidelines. This will also be presented by David Shepherd, our Manager Environmental Sustainability and Open Space.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, this report presents an update to the nature strip guidelines for residents wanting to plant on their nature strips following a community consultation process. Overall, we received really positive feedback on the draft guidelines with a small number of issues raised. We've made some minor amendments to the draft based on that feedback, on top of the revisions to the current guidelines, which include introduction of automated permits, removal of the option to install a permeable surface, and providing clarity that nature strips on arterial roads require permits from Vic roads. The feedback and responses are summarised in the report. The officer recommendation is to adopt the nature strip guidelines as attached to the report, and I commend that recommendation to you.
We'll now move to public submissions. 2 people have indicated they wish to speak on this matter. Both are against the recommendation in the report. Once I've announced your name, please sit at the top of the horseshoe table. If a submitter is not present when their name is called, we will move on to the next speaker. I remind submitters there is a strict time limit tonight of 2 minutes. Please commence the submission with your name and the suburb in which you reside. Our first speaker will be Julie Mulhauser, and she'll be followed by Murray Wilkinson.
Good evening. My name's Julie Mulhauser. I'm a member of Balwyn Rotary and I live in Canterbury. One of the objectives of the guidelines is to support urban biodiversity. Next slide. Road verges account for an astounding 37% of public green space and offer an enormous opportunity to support urban biodiversity. Next slide. Studies have found that roadside reserves planted to support biodiversity increase the number and diversity of insects, particularly large-bodied bees. They also raise awareness of nature-positive actions by visibly changing the streetscape. The importance of this in the context of the extinction crisis faced in Australia and globally cannot be overestimated. Balwyn Rotary, with the generous support of Council's biodiversity team, has helped residents to transform over 60 nature strips in the last 3 years. Next slide. As you can see from the distribution of the transformed nature strips, the best promotional tool is the nature strip themselves. Next slide. Residents seek our support because the tasks of site preparation, planting, design and plant selection is daunting. The new guidelines now, however, stipulate that only hand tools can be used. While we understand that this is intended to protect street trees, as a blanket rule, it will mean an impossible amount of manual labour to achieve the other guideline requirement of a finished level flush with the adjacent footpath and gutter. We currently achieve this by using the tiller, which is in the picture above, to a maximum depth of 15 centimetres, taking care to avoid tree roots. Under the new guidelines, this won't be possible. A reasonable compromise would be, like other councils' guidelines, where hand tools are advised in the tree root zone only. To my knowledge, no other council has a blanket rule stipulating hand tools only, irrespective of whether the works would potentially impact a tree root zone. Balwyn Rotary would love to be able to continue our work, however the blanket hand tools only rule will greatly restrict the number of nature strips we can now transform, which is at odds with the guidelines' objective to support urban biodiversity. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for our speaker? Councillor Buki.
Thank you for your submission, Dr. Mulhauser. Could you please explain to us then how you would mitigate the risks of root damage using mechanical means? Thank you.
A way of identifying plane tree roots often extend beyond the tree canopy and they're usually quite visible from the surface. As I explained, the use of the tiller is really to loosen the soil towards the edges, and tree root zones generally found under the tree canopy. So we would identify the tree root zone based on the position of the canopy, and exercise care. But a lot of the nature strips that we work on don't necessarily have a street tree and don't always need to have that change of level to achieve that flush detail.
So where there is evidence of tree roots, obviously they wouldn't always be visibly evident. They would go beneath the ground. How do you then protect parts of the roots that are below the ground?
So we would not expect them outside the tree canopy area, and we would, well, it's not true, if there's no street tree, it's not necessarily true that there's no tree roots, because obviously the roots, they go wherever. But we, in the 60 that we've done, have, not to our knowledge, damaged any tree roots that's had an adverse effect on street tree health. And I suppose the other thing to say is we're not doing it all over. It's not like we're ploughing a field. It's done in a limited, where it's applicable either to remove thatch or to change the level.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Mulhauser, you've stated that over the last 3 years, Baldwin Rotary has completed 60 nature strips. If you were restricted from using your tiller, have you any idea of how many of those you wouldn't be able to complete?
We discussed that. It's really on a case by case, but when I walked around my neighbourhood to get an idea, it's probably more than 50% would, without using it, would be an unreasonable amount of hand labour to prepare them. And clearly the fact that homeowners are coming to us, they find the whole process daunting.
Okay, and is there with the use of this tiller, is there a optimum depth that you would be?
It's adjustable, is my understanding, to a depth of 15 centimetres. And as I said, it's not used all over the nature strip. It's used where it's necessary either to remove thatch or where we're changing the level to achieve that flush level.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your presentation, Dr. Mulhauser. 2 questions from me. The first question is, in your experience of the 60 or so nature strips that you've and your colleagues at Rotary have assisted in preparing, to your knowledge, has there been any that have resulted in damage to gas pipes, sewer mains, water pipes, or any other services? Any?
So one of the steps which I haven't put up there is we do the dial before you dig, and most services are 60 centimetres below the surface, which is a long way below where we're operating. The only service that might be fouled is the stormwater discharge to the street curb, and you can identify where that is by where it is on the curb.
So in any of your projects, have
No,
any
not
of
to our
these
knowledge.
services been hit?
Not
Okay,
to our knowledge.
thank you. And the second question is, can you give the council some assurances or some feedback as to how these strips are maintained post
Yep.
planting?
We're shortly about to do an audit because we have identified, basically knowledge is, apart from the skills to transform knowledge is also another barrier faced by households. So we're looking to do site surveys and owner surveys to understand people's maintenance challenges and support them with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Julie? There are none. Thank you, Julie. Murray.
Good evening. My name's Murray Wilkinson. I'm a 42-year member of the Rotary Club of Baldwin, and I'm the founder of the Nature Strip Foundation, or project, transformation project. I live in Canterbury. In this last 3 years, we've worked on, as it's been said, a little over 60 separate nature strips, and we've plenty of enthusiasm to continue. One important aspect of our labours has been the use of a machine called a tiller. It's not a rotary hoe, although every Rotary club should have one, a rotary hoe. It's like an oversized lawnmower. So we're careful the way we use this, and as has been said, to my knowledge, not one street tree out of those 60 has suffered damage. The importance of this tiller is for 4 reasons. After spraying with herbicide, it allows us to skim off the top layer of thatch, particularly buffalo grass, is very difficult to move otherwise. Secondly, where the soil level is higher than the surrounding footpath and the curb edging, it softens the soil to allow the soil's easy removal to lower the height. This has to be done to conform with council guidelines, that the soil level must be the same as the concrete. Thirdly, the tilling allows rainwater penetration, and it allows the mulch to nestle down and minimises it drifting away onto the footpath, etc. Fourthly, we've learned that right beside the concrete edges, lowering the soil a little extra allows the mulch to settle and act as an anchor to minimise its unwanted spread, and the tiller simplifies that task. We have enjoyed a good working relationship with our council people, including their provision of mulch, for which we are very grateful for our clients. We're very concerned with any ruling that no mechanical equipment is permitted to work on nature strips. It would significantly impact our future efforts. We're very mindful with care of street trees and do not wish to cause them any problems. What we propose is that people would be permitted to use a tiller with a maximum depth of 15 centimetres, and they undertake to avoid using it anywhere within the tree canopy zone. They must also avoid any visible surface routes outside of that area. This would leave people free to use a tiller to work on the other areas of the nature strip. I trust this meets with approval of council. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for Murray? Councillor Tawney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Murray. Just a really quick, simple question. A tiller, so it's like a kind of a lawnmower, I think, Julia, you said.
An oversized lawnmower.
Oversized lawnmower. So when you set, is it easy to set that depth that you talked about?
There is a setting to govern the depth, but the most it can dig is 15 centimetres.
Anyway, that's the maximum.
Yeah, no matter how hard you try.
Yep. Okay, so all tillers would be the same. They'd just dig
No,
to...
I'm sure there's other tillers.
That would go
They
further.
then become what you call a rotary hoe, I'd say. They go deeper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Berkey.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and I've just got to say I love the T-shirt. It's fantastic. Murray, thanks for your presentation. I just wanted to know if you didn't use the tiller, what would be the impact in the effort and the time that a manual, way of removing the top growth, what would that be?
Well, none of us are youngsters. I hit 88 this month, but others in the team are somewhat younger. But it would be a significant amount of extra labour. I would think it would curtail our enthusiasm to some extent, that we'd just have to walk away and say to the owner, sorry, we're not allowed to work on yours with the tiller, so we're not going to tackle it, and just put them aside. And I'd guess something like 20% of the cases might be affected.
Okay, and just one more question then. Are there any other means with which you could clear the grass ready for planting? Like what if you were to, cover the grass and kill the grass in a passive way? I believe there's a length of time that you can do that. Have you considered using that method instead?
In cases where there's no apparent need for hoeing to soften or whatever, our policy is now to not use the tiller, and make sure the grass is dead and gone away, and then have the mulch spread out, and then plant through the mulch. So that's the situation here.
Right, okay, thank you.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I have the same question. In your experience of having overseen over 60 of these nature strip plantings, in your experience, have you ever hit a pipe, a gas pipe, a water pipe, a sewage pipe, to your knowledge?
No, the answer is no. I think Julie mentioned that the one that is vulnerable is a stormwater pipe, because it typically comes out from the house as long as the gutter's below the house level, and it can be just getting on the surface when it gets to the gutter. We've been careful not to hit them, and haven't.
So you've never hit a gas pipe, you've never hit a water pipe, you've never hit a sewerage pipe. I'm guessing the reason for that is those pipes, those essential services, are typically
Yeah, they're
located
supposed
well
to
below
be-
15
supposed to be
centimetres.
60 centimetres deep, and we haven't ever struck one.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. My questions have largely been asked already, but look, I'll ask one additional one. Have council officers expressed concern to you in the past about using a tiller, or any advice or strategies or concerns? And has that been, to your recollection, an issue previously? Or have you...
I don't recall ever hearing a negative from the council about that, no.
So since you've been up and running, you've been using a tiller quite effectively and efficiently?
Yes, yes, it's a great tool.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Murray? There are none. I just want to take a moment, Murray, to acknowledge you received a special commendation from this council this year for your volunteering in this space. And I just wanted to congratulate and thank you for your many years of volunteering in Boroondara.
Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. We will now return to officers for matters arising.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the work of the Rotary Club of Balwyn in their contribution to delivery of transformation of nature strips. It's really significant that they've delivered 60 in the last 3 years out of a total number of permits issued, which is around 150. So it's a really significant proportion that they are contributing to. Obviously, the main issue that they have raised concern with is about the prohibition of machinery being utilised on nature strips. The reason that is the position put forward by officers is that there's a large risk involved in that process on nature strips. Tree roots, utility services, including gas, water, telecommunications, all run underneath the ground through nature strips. And the risk is borne by council. Should something go wrong, services are disrupted, or there's an injury of any type, the liability will come back to council to deal with. I would also say that there is a mechanism within the guidelines that allow an applicant to say they don't wish to comply with the guidelines and they would like to have a conversation with council officers before proceeding, and that would be an opportunity for us to understand the capability and competency of someone undertaking this type of work, so that we could have a conversation and determine the suitability of the nature strip and the way in which the works were to be undertaken on an individual basis, rather than applying a blanket permission of machinery outright. Thank you, Chair.
Councillors, are there any questions of the officers? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested in understanding what statutory depths are required for major services. I've got two questions. The first is, what statutory depths are required for major services? Electricity, NBN, water, sewerage, stormwater and gas.
Through you, Mr Chair, I may assist with that. We will not know the specific requirements for each of those utilities. However, the point I would make is that in Boroondara, many of those services predate there being specific requirements. So it's not a case of being able to say that you can be confident that each of them are even at the prescribed depth. I think that would be the first point to make. The other is, which is that reference has been made to stormwater pipes. I know for a fact that my next door neighbour's stormwater pipe comes out in front of my curb in my property. And so to conclude they automatically run directly out from the property in question would not be a correct assumption to make. They in fact can be running downhill, of course, which is where you want the water to go. So there's an assumption there that perhaps a little bit questionable based on experience. The other point I would make is that you've got a sample size of around 60 out of 70,000 properties as a basis for drawing a conclusion as to whether or not there is likely to be damage, and I'm not sure that's a very significant sample size. And I guess I would just again emphasise the observation made by Mr Shepherd about the risk council chooses to take here.
Thank you. My second question, and perhaps if I could. My second question is about the use of your words large risk. You use the words that in your considered opinion there is a large risk of a tiller interfering with these essential services. Could you expand on what you mean by that? Is that a 80% chance? What do you mean by large risk?
Perhaps just as Mr Shepherd goes to answer, can I just make the point that we'd first of all like to acknowledge the work being done by Rotary, so none of this is to deny the value of that. The second thing is to say that if everyone behaved responsibly and just used a tiller, when we talk about mechanical equipment, then there may be less concerns than we have, but not everybody will do that. And there is therefore a risk given options which might be used by some people with good intent, but without understanding the implications. Perhaps if you could respond to the balance.
Yeah, thank you. And to add to that, the comment around large risk was focused on consequence, perhaps more so than likelihood. Although, as our CEO indicated, we do not know the depth of all of the services through nature strips in Burundara, given the age of some of those services.
So the consequences could be dramatic. You hit a power cable, you hit a sewage pipe, I understand that, but the likelihood of that happening, in your opinion?
It is still a reasonable likelihood, I would say, given the age of the infrastructure in Burundara, and that without any sort of limitation on the machinery to be utilised, there creates a risk for us that we have no control over on our land where we are liable for that risk.
Councillor Fran Pereira.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Perhaps officers could assist. I'm trying to find the part in the policies that are in the guidelines that specifies if you don't agree with the permit conditions, you can contact councillors. I've been looking at Section 6 and Section 7, but if you could point me to it, that would be of great assistance. And then I have 3 more questions.
I'm not sure I can point you there offhand either, but it's definitely part of the application form.
Okay, all right, thank you. I guess then I've got a couple of other questions, slightly deviating from previous ones. In section 4.2, these are talking about obligations to council and consultation and reinstatement works. Would there be any challenge from officers if we were to say, at the moment I think we're saying that we would not necessarily consult in emergency situations and whatnot and footpath widening, would we be able to actually give an undertaking that that would be an exception rather than the norm?
Through you, Chair. In emergency situations, we would need to intervene. Comfortable that that could be the exception rather than the norm, and if wording was added to indicate that we were willing to consult wherever practical, that would be okay by officers.
Thank you. And then with regards to that same section, reinstatement, currently we're saying to normal condition, normal conditions, I think is the phrase used. My concern is that if somebody undertakes the revegetation work or the rewilding work and then council undertake works, are we limiting ourselves to the normal conditions, which I understand is grass seeds, and could we potentially loosen that up?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. There would be a financial implication of committing to anything more than returning to normal nature strip condition, planting and so on, but we do have funding within the biodiversity budget to support the provision of plants to residents undertaking nature strips permits, and so there is some opportunity to provide further support in scenarios where we have caused some damage.
Thank you. And two final questions. Section 4.3 talks about utility providers. I understand they operate entirely independently, and any of us who've seen either the impacts on our roads or paths after a utility company has undertaken works knows the challenges of the reinstatement works. But would we be able to in this policy or guidelines, take a position of advocating to them to restore nature strips back to the condition that they were found in?
Through you, Chair, we're happy to accept that challenge of advocating for better outcomes for our community when service providers cause damage to a nature strip that has been converted in this way.
Thank you. And my final question, which brings us back to this key issue of mechanical machines and depths. The very first point in the guidelines is that all underground services must be located prior to works. Can I get a bit more of an explanation? The CEO talked aptly about how all of our historic services may not be to the depths, but surely if we're getting an identification of all underground works, then it should be possible to navigate that space and avoid the use of a machine that could damage any of those underground services.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The identification of services through the Dial Before You Dig program is not 100% accurate. Not all services are necessarily mapped through the nature strips, and sometimes they are mapped in ways that are inaccurate. We certainly experience that in our own works as well, where we hit things that are not where they're supposed to be. So, yes and no, I guess I'm saying. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. How does council mitigate risk in the case of contractors or council staff where they undertake works in a similar location and use mechanical equipment? Because that would be it'd be almost an expectation, and we'd carry the risk in the same way. So I'm just curious how that might be managed and whether there might be an application of the learnings in that space for the current nature strip guidelines.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Part of our mitigation is ensuring that we are engaging qualified staff and or contractors for those types of work, and that they are working in controlled ways. Service identification, as best as it can be done, is part of that process as well. So we do know as best we can where those services are and work around them accordingly. It is largely about those qualifications, skills, experience in working in these environments and ensuring that things are done in accordance with our practices.
Thank you. And in the policy, there's nowhere that I could see that it specifically said that if you disagree or that if you want to use mechanical equipment, you need a separate permit or a separate degree of certification or approval. Is that something that could be put in? I mean, where we've got organisations that are experienced and responsible and have undertaken appropriate training, because is that something that we could include? And I note that the policy is an automated approval, but is there a way of addressing the issue that we've got before us?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, you absolutely could do that. I would be a little bit hesitant to do that because it kind of promotes the use of mechanical equipment, which is something we are actively trying to avoid for all of the risk that we spoke about earlier. So the avenue is still there and available, but preference would be not to actively promote that opportunity.
Perhaps, Mr Chair, if I could just add to that to assist Councillor Franco. I think if Council was of our mind to want to make adjustments to accommodate the use of mechanical equipment, then the process would really need to be that an application should be made specifically nominating that to be the case. that would involve a process of ensuring the applicant is checked with dig before, soil dial before you dig, and checking out that they can find whatever data actually exists in relation to infrastructure which is underground. Our staff would need to ensure that tree roots were being adequately protected, because what you've heard tonight, which as I understood it was essentially that there wouldn't be any tilling underneath tree canopy, would rule out most nature strips because most have nature strip canopies which are larger than the nature strip. So there would need to be a process, I think, which is designed to mitigate the risk as far as possible. And you could put that in place. It could be in this particular document as a requirement you make. I would just make the observation in that case that there's a resource implication which would have to be managed. The staff will need to be more actively involved, but it can be done if that's your aspiration for how this is dealt with.
Thank you. I have one further question, Chair, if that's okay, and related to a separate topic, which is the conventional treatment that council provides in terms of seeds on soil. Are those seeds native seeds? And if not, can we ensure that that is the case? And I asked that question because under the guidelines somewhere, I'm trying to, guidelines for nature strip planting, point 2 and section 6, it says plants selected for your nature strip must be indigenous or Australian native ground covers, grasses or small shrubs. But in terms of the grasses that council facilitates, are they natives and can they be?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Our current grass mix is a mix of rye and kikuyu, I think it is. So typically what you will see on nature strips around the municipality, so it matches in with that because we're trying to reinstate to a normal condition. In the scenario where we impacted on a more biodiverse nature strip, we could certainly consider looking at alternative grass species in that scenario.
Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions, so bear with me. My first is around risk and litigation, and I'm wondering if you might speak to the exposure council will have by having uneven surfaces on a greater proportion of our nature strips, which will then impact on people, pedestrians crossing the road, potentially dwelling on the road, and people alighting from vehicles.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The guidelines allow some navigable paths to be created through the planting so that people can get to and from a footpath safely. So the nature strip area is not typically your primary point of travel when travelling along a street as such. There's a footpath in most cases in Burundara for that purpose. So the impact of these plantings I don't see as a huge risk in that scenario.
Sorry, bear with me, but you're not driving your car along a footpath, you're parking the car adjacent to the curb and requiring to cross that. You can't park adjacent to a crossover, which is smooth and flat. So it is crossing that biodiverse nature strip that may be problematic.
Yes, and through you, Chair, the opportunity is here to lay pavers so that you can cross safely and allow paths of travel. The guidelines require you to allow space for car doors to open safely and to alight from your vehicle onto the nature strip without landing in the plantings as such. So we think that the guidelines are suitably set up to provide safe access from a vehicle to and from a nature strip, to and from a footpath.
Thanks. Perhaps the CEO might be better placed to address the risk profile question that council would bear.
I guess we have highlighted both in the report and this evening that clearly if council allows for particularly the use of mechanical equipment, which is a much greater risk than hand digging, for example, and there is an incident which causes loss of life or injury, then council will have a liability as a consequence of it being our asset and having allowed that activity to take place on it, particularly when we had the choice not to do that. I did ask that we seek to get some insight into whether there would be an impact on our insurance as a consequence of further introducing this risk. I'm not sure that we've been able to get an answer today. Mr. Wee, was no answer today? No, okay. So I can't tell you whether there's an impact on our insurance as a consequence of taking this step a little further.
Thank you, that's insightful, and causes me to wonder whether we're in a position to make a decision absent that information. If somebody were to trip on a planting, on a nature strip, that would also therefore be council's responsibility, do I assume, as it would be if it was grass?
I would have taken the view that if there has been some intervention on the nature strip, which is actually in line with a policy outcome council itself has created, that as opposed to that being a consequence for the resident who's put the structure there, or whatever it happens to be the person has tripped on, would become more council's responsibility than it would the property owner's responsibility.
Thank you. Has there been, and I wasn't able to find this in the report, engagement with the utility companies in the consultation phase?
Through you, Chair, no, there has not been.
Thank you, I think that exhausts my questions.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you. One additional question comes to mind. With the draft guidelines as currently proposed, and I'm just seeking clarification from officers on this, so section 6.1, final sentence. So this is under the before you dig Australia requirement. Additionally, if you would be responsible for the cost of repairing the damaged services infrastructure. So I'm trying to understand if the first requirement that we have in giving these permits is to say you must use the before you dig service, and then that if any damage occurs, that the responsibility for the cost of repairing the damaged services actually falls on the permit applicant, and that's regardless of whether it's a machine operated or manual situation. So does that not in some way mitigate the liability and risk issues that have been flagged?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, it does go some way to mitigating those risks. I wouldn't say that it fully mitigates those risks. There is still some potential exposure for council in this scenario.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I've got a further question that I've been thinking about in light of the discussion. One of the issues that officers raised is the potential additional resources required to manage a process associated with permitting the use of mechanical devices. And in the specific case, we're talking about a tiller, and I presume that the existing draft guidelines minimise the use of council staff and officers and resources because it's an automated approval process if you comply. Would officers, and in the questioning that I raised before, one option, a part of the discussion was a potential site-by-site approval, but an alternative approach, and I don't know if officers have a view on this, rather than a site-by-site analysis and assessment for the permission of the use of specifically a tiller, could be, and I don't know what the view of officers is, and this is what I'd like, issuing an approval to a adequately resourced and experienced organisation, akin to the way our contractors might be approved for undertaking work, such as Baldwin Rotary, if they demonstrate an understanding and compliance in issuing a permit to an organisation like that, if they're the ones involved in the use of a tiller, rather than site by site by site by site. I appreciate it's a on-the-spot question, but do officers have a view on that?
I guess my response to that would be that we'd really need to get some legal advice, because as I understand what you're putting, we would be directing every property owner who wished to do a nature strip planting to one contractor, and that contractor would then need to negotiate a price with that property owner. So the impact of doing it that way is that we are engaging, if you like, what used to be called third line forcing. I'm not sure what it's called now, under competition legislation, but the risk you run in forcing a resident who owns a property to engage one contractor to do work in that way is something I guess I'd want to get some legal advice about.
Just one follow-up. I wasn't suggesting mandating the use of one contractor, simply that if the use of a mechanical equipment is required, approvals need to be in place, and any contractor could get those approvals, or any body or persons undertaking the work to the satisfaction of council.
Okay, perhaps if I could just seek some clarification then. Are you suggesting that if a resident wishes to do nature strip planting, they would be required to engage a contractor to then liaise with council with regard to doing the installation of the planting? Is that what you have in mind?
What I had in mind was a clause when a person's applying to undertake a nature strip, that if they, making clear that mechanical equipment is not allowed, but you need special permission. Do you wish to apply for special permission, or do you have special permission? Now, if they're using a supplier or a provider that has that experience and has an approval, then that approval's in place. So if Baldwin Rotary is part of the application process, they might have that standing agreement if they've met certain requirements. And if it's not that group, if it's just a person who wishes to apply, then they have to specifically apply and demonstrate that they've got an understanding of what they're doing before they're permitted to use mechanical equipment, whether it's a tiller or something else.
There are a couple of questions in there, one of which is, does the person providing that advice or undertaking that role charge the property owner for doing so? Or are they in fact engaged by council to provide advice to the property owner, in which case council would need to seek to recover the cost of doing so from the property owner, unless council itself decided to subsidise that piece of work? So they're the sorts of issues I can see just on the spot that might arise from how you might do that. So I'm not saying it can't be done. There are some things that would have to be worked through to do it that way.
Councillor Ibuki.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Mr Shepherd, the end of the nature strip planting guidelines talks about the process of applying for a permit. Am I right in saying that after a permit is granted and the nature strip is replanted, it is then the responsibility for compliance is with the resident, and we don't do a further check? We rely on breaches being reported to us to then rectify?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, yes, that is how we operate at the moment, that permit allows you to do works in accordance with the guidelines. If someone reports concerns about a nature strip, we do investigate it and check if it is compliant with the guidelines or not.
Thank you. And just one more question, and it might have been covered, so I apologise if that's the case. When we were talking about 4.2 and 4.3, the reinstatement of the nature strip back to a normal condition, is it feasible and workable then that we have that consultation with the resident so that we don't assume that we're having reinstatement of what was previously there before the work was undertaken? For instance, there might be an intention by the resident to change the nature of the nature strip, and then it might be efficient for us then to change the nature strip to a different one, then reinstate it to its original condition.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, there's definitely opportunities for us to explore that further. We're not quite there yet, but the nature of council undertaking works along a streetscape does present opportunities for nature strip conversion at the same time, which is something that we are keen to explore to see if interested residents can take advantage of that opportunity when we're in the street.
Councillor Tawney.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions. One is, I'm curious as to what a lot of the other metropolitan councils are doing with regards to their nature strip guidelines and the use of machine equipment. Are you able to speak to that?
Through you, Chair, I don't know all of them, but I do know most of our neighbours also specify that hand tools must be required, must be used.
And looking at the report, my book just turned off. Looking at the report, it says that we introduced our first guidelines in 2010. So we've been running nature strip planting guidelines for 15 years. In that time, based on I think it's 15 a year or whatever the average is, have we had issues with people tripping or digging and finding something, or any of the issues that have been raised tonight that have raised concerns about legal liability?
Through you, Chair, I'd firstly say that the current guidelines don't permit machinery to be utilised either, so this is not actually a change that we're proposing. But no, we haven't had issues of incidents that you refer to.
And the truth may have been revealed, but people have might have been using machines for a very long period of time, which may still continue because people might not quite understand even though apply for a permit. But we've had no issues in 15 years. Thank you.
Councillor Friend-Pereira.
I just wish to foreshadow a motion, Chair.
Councillor Sinfield.
Yeah, I was going to suggest a deferral on this, which Councillor Friend-Pereira may wish to take into consideration. I'm not sure that we have all of the information that we need, specifically the legal advice that was referred to in order to make a decision on this.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Is it permissible for our final two councillors to have their questions asked before we consider that?
You're the chair.
Marvellous. Councillor Nolan.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We spoke earlier about there were questions to officers about risk, and I'm sitting here contemplating allowing machinery would introduce many more uncontrolled risks. You know, we anticipate people are going to use a tiller, but they may not. I'm just contemplating now, when we talk about risks, has there been contemplation of liability, recognising that you weren't recommending that we allow machinery, but has there been legal liability contemplation, or have we gone to lawyers on the use of both machinery or non-machinery?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, we have not had legal advice on use of machinery at this point in time. No.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing a further question or two from me. To Councillor Nolan's point, I'm interested in exploring this issue of risk versus return. I think we understand from the submitters tonight what impact the inability to use a tiller would have on their ability to roll out these projects. from your perspective, I'm keen to understand what the risk is. We talked before about hitting services, but I'd just like you to explain to me, if you could please, the differences between a catastrophic or a substantial outcome that you refer to and a minor one. Because my understanding, and I have some considerable experience in this, in this space, is that water mains are different from a local water supply, and gas mains are different from a single gas supply to a house. Similarly with electricity, in the olden days, most electricity is overhead, and in modern times where electricity is buried below ground, it complies with, or would typically comply with, minimum depths. It's the same with NBN. That's a more modern underground service. So when I think of what the risk is of a catastrophic accident occurring by a tiller, I'm thinking it's hitting a water main, a sewerage supply, or a gas main, as distinct from a minor service to a single house. Hitting a gas pipe to a single house is not a catastrophic outcome, I would suggest, nor hitting a water pipe is a catastrophic outcome. You get a split pipe, you get a burst of water, and you can be patched. So it feels to me that the high risk, substantial catastrophic outcomes really might only come down to those mains services. Have I got that right? Am I on the right track there? Would you care to comment on that observation of mine?
Perhaps if you think about the services being connected to the mains themselves, so if someone were to take out a gas line, for example, then in order to fix that, there'll need to be some work done which might involve, depending upon the extent of it, closing down the main to enable the work to be done. That's perhaps more how that risk can arise, because most of the mains are going to be under the road, perhaps more so than under the nature strip. There might be some that are from historical reasons, but it's more what happens in terms of impacts on other neighbours, more what happens as a consequence of a local supply being disrupted, which then requires some temporary shutdown of the main service. The other risks, of course, unfortunately, sometimes you need to look at these things in the hands of someone who might not either be experienced or understand, or might just be somewhat determined to provide their nature strip planting and bring a front end loader to the site and dig up the nature strip with that, which is not quite the finesse that one might look for. So when you're making these sorts of rules, sadly, sometimes you just have to think about, well, what would happen if it was in the hands of someone who behaved that way because of the liability which can arise. So there are risks here, and it is a question of how you want to balance, as was said earlier, the risk against the reward, the return, if you like, to the community. And we all think nature strip planting is a very positive thing to do. That's the thing here. This is not about trying to stop it, it's about trying to facilitate, and whether what's here does that adequately, you'll judge.
Thank you. And my final question, if mechanical tillers weren't used, one would assume that hand tools would be used. Do you have any comments about the potential impact of a spade or a mattock being struck into the soil, and whether that may also lead to hitting of services?
It's certainly possible. The difference is that because you've got it in your hand and under your foot, you're more likely to observe it's actually hit the structure before continuing all the way through, whatever that happens to be. When you've got a mechanical device, particularly a rotary hoe, which has got a lot more weight and a lot more power, much more so than a tiller, for example, then that equation shifts.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for officers? There are none. I note that Councillor John Friend Pereira foreshadowed a motion, but in the interest of the meeting, I'm going to move to Councillor Sinfield. Did you still wish to proceed with your proposed deferral motion?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think further consideration of the consequences, unintended and otherwise, are probably required in order for us to do our due diligence with the benefit of the legal advice.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Nolan.
Happy to second.
To assist the mover, is anyone opposed? We're just going to put it straight to a vote. All those in favour? For motion to defer. All those against? I declare the motion carried. We will now move to the next item, 4.3, Public Toilet Strategy. This item will be presented by Abdullahi Ahmed, Manager Asset and Capital Planning.
Through you, Chair, I'm pleased to introduce the Public Toilet Strategy, which sets the vision for how Council will provide and manage public toilets across Boroondara over the next 10 years. Public toilets support residents and visitors to enjoy our neighbourhood activity centres, parks, sporting facilities and playgrounds comfortably and safely. The strategy recognises that quality public toilets enhance accessibility, well-being and the local economy. The work began with clear community feedback during the development of the Boroondara Asset Plan 22-23 to 2032-33, that our current provision needed improvement both in quality and quantity. To develop this strategy, a detailed review of every facility was undertaken, assessing usability, safety, design and accessibility. We also listened to over 380 contributors in our community survey from November 2023 to February 2024, as well as our Community Disability Advisory Committee and key internal teams. The strategy addresses several consistent issues raised, including cleanliness and maintenance standards, gaps in toilet locations. The plan also includes stronger cleaning maintenance regime under a new contract, a targeted program to install more public toilets, 8 new and 7 upgraded over the next decade, inclusion of sanitary bins in all public toilets to improve health, well-being and inclusion, and move towards a Boroondara-specific design for greater usability, integration and consistency. Capital budgets will be aligned to meet the delivery of new and upgraded facilities, and operational budgets adjusted to support their ongoing maintenance. These allocations will be considered through the annual budget process. Ultimately, the strategy is about delivering clean, safe, well-located and accessible facilities for everyone. On behalf of the officers, I'd like to thank the community for their contributions. Thank you.
We'll now move to public submissions. One person has indicated they wish to make a submission on this matter and they are against the recommendations in the report. Once I've announced their name, please sit at the top of the horseshoe table. If a submitter is not present when their name is called, we'll move on to the next speaker. And I remind submitters that there is a strict time limit of 2 minutes. Please commence the submission with your name and the suburb in which you reside. And our first and only submitter tonight is Gregory Ball.
I ask the Council not to adopt the public toilet strategy and instead refer it back to staff for further work. I will comment on style, cost, demand, signage and capacity. First, style. Many country towns in Australia have attractive traditional public toilets, especially in parks. Usually they are open, spacious, well ventilated and have good capacity for park users and visitors. Often there is provision for disabled people and baby changing rooms for parents. My elderly mother feels comfortable using these public toilets. My mother does not feel comfortable using the Exclude toilets, has never used one, and would rather return home than try to use one. She considers them to be claustrophobic, possibly smelly, dark if the light fails, and is scared of getting locked in. In shopping malls, she's accustomed to seeing electronic opening and closing toilets out of order, not because of the plumbing, but because of the door failure. For older people, the most basic versions of modern Exelu-like toilets probably remind them of septic tank outhouses in backyards, while for younger people, they likely remind them of construction site portable toilets. There appears to be a trend back to traditional style toilets. Examples of recent well-designed toilets, which are popular with residents and visitors, are Arlington Park in New South Wales, 2, Bel Air National Park in South Australia, 3, North Bondi Amenities in New South Wales, built out of reclaimed building materials, Cistern Chapel in Maryborough, Queensland, and Hundertwasser public toilets in Kawakawa, New Zealand, a converted old traditional toilet now considered to be an architectural masterpiece. Next, cost. Burundara states that the cost of an Exelou-like toilet is about $500,000. Really? This seems to be very high to me. The city of Marion in South Australia states that the cost of a single Exelou toilet is $180,000, including supply, installation and connection, and $300,000 for the cost of 2. Council meeting on the 25th of February, 2021. Next, demand, location and capacity. For large events, a single toilet is not sufficient. Large capacity traditional toilets are more appropriate. The Continent Society Foundation of Australia estimates that 25% of Australians suffer from incontinence.
Greg, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, let me go right to the bottom then. 35% of respondents in the survey expected a preference for automated toilets, while 41%, a greater number, expressed a preference for traditional toilets, expressing a desire to have control of the door and likelihood of more cubicles. It appears to me that Burundara has not listened to the feedback of residents. I request Council refer the strategy back to staff for further work.
Thank you, Greg. Councillors, are there any questions for Greg? Councillor Fran Pereira.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Ball. Mr. Ball, I hear one of the chief concerns you have there is the Exelous. You are aware that on page 38 of the report, Council is planning to discontinue the installation of Exelous.
I didn't notice that, but I often referred to, when I spoke, I said Exelou-like toilets.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Ball, for your considered submission. You mentioned a couple of exemplar toilet blocks, North Bondi and a few others that are really architectural gems and, great public assets that are well used and liked. Do you have any suggestions to us? Obviously, they would come at some cost and wouldn't be appropriate everywhere. Do you have any suggestions to Council or any ideas where toilet blocks of that status ought be in Burundara?
Where they should be. I think the first place to start would be in public parks, where nice traditional toilets, architecturally attractive to users. I think parks is the place to start. The problems with other areas is the space is more limited.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any other questions for our speaker? There are none. Thank you, Greg. We will now return to officers for matters arising.
Through you, Chair, the public toilet strategy proposes moving away from the standard prefabricated facilities like Exelous towards a Burundara-specific design and construction approach. The reasons given include better integration with local surroundings, addressing limitations of them, including ineffective cleaning, downtime, safety concerns. The strategy outlines future facilities will be designed and built rather than the purchased standardised prefabricated model. In terms of the cleanliness and maintenance, since May 2025, a new cleaning contract has been implemented, which requires regular inspections and immediate reporting of maintenance issues. We conduct regular performance assessments to ensure cleaning quality meets community expectations. Additionally, the strategy includes a planned renewal approach so that the aging facilities are systematically upgraded and replaced. Well, in terms of the total cost breakdown, public toilets are complex facilities. They require durable, resistant materials, full of accessibility compliance, safe plumbing, electrical systems, including site preparation, design, landscaping, project management costs. And these facilities are designed for heavy public use over many years. So the quality and safety standards contribute to the higher costs, similar to constructing a small building. So in terms of breakdowns, we've got the electrical services up to 10%, the design, planning up to 20%, site preliminaries another 25%, so they all add up in terms of the costs. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions of the officers? Councillor Chris Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask the officers a question that's sort of come up in my mind by listening to the last speaker. Is it practical? Is manual control of the toilet door practical, and why don't we do it? And whether with the automatic doors, whether we can actually extend that beyond 10 minutes, just to address a concern that the previous speaker had. If you could please explain what the options there are in terms of not feeling like you're locked in and having enough time for the person that's in the toilet.
Yeah, the main issue is loitering and sleeping. If you spend too long in there, we'll have those issues of loitering and sleeping in there. Or even abuse of violence.
And can the 10-minute time limit be extended? Like, can we offer one extension or something like that if people have concerns that they need more time?
Conceivably, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you, Chair. Specific question in relation to public toilets that are co-located at pavilions or other community buildings or infrastructure. I'm just thinking about the opening hours, which at the moment are operating hours, I should say, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. 1st of April to 31st of October, and 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. 1st of November to 31st of March. If the facility, be it a pavilion or library or community centre or whatnot, is being operated by a leaseholder outside of those hours, would it be possible to ask them to take a role in opening the public toilets or closing the public toilets in order to extend the usage of those hours? Or is the expectation that while they're there, so while a football match might be going on, that any member of the public could use the toilets within the pavilion?
Yep, so through you, Chair, the public toilets operating hours are independent of pavilion use. So if pavilion users require toilets outside those public toilet hours, they have to use the pavilion's internal facilities. For example, if there was a birthday party during that time held in a pavilion until 11 p.m. on Saturday, the public toilet will not be open, and it operates only during those set public hours. And it's to allow consistency throughout the community and communication.
If I may, I guess what I'm trying to get to is, so in that instance where a birthday party or a private event might be occurring, if a member of the general public who wasn't part of that event needed the use of a public convenience, would they be able to avail of the one within the pavilion?
It depends on the closed function. If the doors are locked, yeah, it depends on the function.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on Mr. Ball's observations about country toilets and well-designed featured toilet blocks, if you like, I note with interest your report, which I commend you on. It's an extremely thorough and well-researched report, and thank you for that. But you've classified, excuse me, I'm just scrolling to the page on page 30, the different types of toilet blocks that the policy from automatic, semi-automatic, non-automatic, traditional, etc. Are any of the proposed new toilets that you're looking at able or likely to be able to be of that high quality design and that architectural statement, if you like, a landmark toilet block, if you like? Is there any that are proposed in your policy here that either may fit that category or could or should?
Perhaps I could address that, which is to say that the provision of toilets into the future will be a matter for council to determine. And so it's going to be open to you to decide which of the models you might prefer. That's a question of allocating the appropriate budget and giving the appropriate directions as to the outcome you wish.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thanks to the officers for this, as Councillor Osborne-Smith said, very detailed report. I just, studying page 54, the North East Service Catchment Area. So North Balwyn, north of Doncaster Road, has two locations where residents have raised with me, and I'm really asking a question: can we contemplate again the fact that North Balwyn has just the one sport ground, and that one does not have a public toilet, but it's very well patronised, and I was driving past there last night with my son and 15 or 20 people out and about. And the second one is Cascade Park on Bulleen Road, which is 500 metres from the Bellevue shops, next to a playground, next to a kindergarten. So I'm wondering if we can add those to the potential in part of this review beyond tonight.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, in accordance with the public toilet strategy, section 4.4, distribution of public toilets, the particular sites of the northeast zone, they were rated as low priority. But in saying that, we recognise the need for facilities in areas and it will remain under consideration for future upgrades. Timing will depend on council priorities, available funding and the relative urgency of other identified locations.
Thank you.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. The report contemplates Burundara-specific design toilets and moving away from Exelou. Are officers able to provide any guidance in terms of the financial implications of self-design, of our unique design toilets? And I assume there'll be a trade-off between the amount of toilets we can actually provide, which we could roll out more simply if they're lower cost. And secondly, in relation to the Burundara unique design, does that mean continuing to develop, does that mean developing a unique design in consultation or in collaboration with Exelou or some other toilet provider, or some unique IP developed by the city of Burundara?
To deal with your first point, designing a purpose-built structure will be more expensive than Exelou, which is one of the reasons why Exelou has attracted the interest of so many local governments. It's a lot cheaper to use that system, not only in terms of construction, but also cleaning and supervision. The other point to make is that the way this council has spoken of the question previously is to ensure that we design something which fits the location adequately and makes a positive contribution to the public realm. And so there may not be one simple standardised solution adopted even by council. It may well be it's a solution which is fit for the particular location and setting in which it's to be built.
Does that mean incorporating a standardised Exelou within a building that's customised to the location, whether it's embedded into a new building or a standalone building that's clad in a particular way, but the Exelou features remain Exelou features?
No, because some of the issues being raised about Exelou are not just about its external appearance, they're also about the internal appearance of them. People feeling that where you've got a self-cleaning Exelou, you might get a free shower if you're in there at the wrong time, as the facility is in a self-cleaning mode. So there are various concerns which can arise with Exelous from different members of our community, and I think that to say that we would simply build something attractive over the top of it to dress it up as something else would not be our response.
Could we be provided with some information in terms of the financial implications of going in each direction? Thanks.
Mr. Chair, the response to the cost of building a purpose-built structure will vary from one location to the next. So we can confirm in very general terms that it will be more expensive to do that. But as for the specifics, that will depend upon the design of the location.
Councillors, are there any final questions for officers? There are none. I'm now in search of a motion. Councillor Osborne-Smith.
I'm happy to put up a motion in support of the officer's recommendation.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Ibuki.
Happy to second, thank you.
To assist the mover, is anyone opposed? No one is opposed. Councillor Osborne-Smith, as the mover of the motion, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Chair. I'll say just a few words. Firstly, to congratulate Mr Ahmed and the council officers on an incredibly thorough report. It made for comprehensive reading, and we're grateful for the effort that you put into this work on the toilet strategy. I hear very clearly Mr Ball's comments, and I am quite sympathetic to his observations about well-designed civic spaces, including toilet blocks that could be architecturally credible and really add to our public realm. And I am satisfied from what I've heard tonight that that opportunity will still present itself very much to certain toilets that we may choose to build in the future, subject to funding, etc. So I'm supportive of this motion. I think particularly the guiding principles that were set out in the report are well enunciated, and the report demonstrates the strategy can deliver clean and well-maintained toilets that are safe and secure, that are accessible and inclusive, conveniently located, easy to find, open for hours that suit, and that are environmentally sustainable. So I commend this motion to my fellow councillors. Thanks very much.
Councillor Ibuki, as the seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, I think that with the report we have a lot of statistics and feedback that show that public toilets are very important to people as an accessible facility, and I think that we can do better. There are issues that you are working on, such as issues around the lack of cleanliness. These things are just so important for people, so I really do look forward to seeing some movement on some of the ratings, and look forward to, and thank the community for their feedback, which has helped us to create or to work on this policy and understand the gaps and what we need to do to make sure that the community have public facilities that they are happy to use. Thank you.
Do any other councillors wish to speak to this motion? There are none. I'll put it to a vote. All those favouring the motion? I declare the motion carried. We'll now move on to item 4.4, Significant Tree Register Update 2025. And the officer presenting will be Joel Elborn. And Shane Branner.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be handing over to Daniel Murphy, who will present for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The purposes of officers reporting this matter to the Services Delegated Committee is to outline feedback received from community consultation undertaken in relation to the proposed updates to the City of Boroondara Significant Tree Register. In late 2024, Council officers commenced a process of updating the register, which included benchmarking nominated trees against the National Trust of Australia criteria and a review by an independent arborist. Following the review, it was recommended that 313 trees be added to the register. All affected residents were informed of the proposed updates and invited to make a submission during community consultation. A total of 87 submissions were received, including 22 submissions of support, 61 opposing the updates and 4 neutral. Officers do not consider that any of the issues raised through community consultation require withdrawal of nominations. A separate set of follow-up actions and options are considered in the report in response to matters raised through the community consultation process. Concurrent with the independent arborist assessment, Council officers have surveyed all existing trees on the register. The outcome of the survey is that 26 trees are recommended for deletion. The officer recommendation is that the Services Delegated Committee resolve to note and consider the submissions received regarding the updates to the City of Boroondara Significant Tree Register and refer consideration of adoption of updates to the City of Boroondara Significant Tree Register as outlined in attachments 1 and 2 to a future meeting of Council.
We will now move to public submissions. 11 people have indicated they wish to make a submission on this matter. 9 are against the recommendation in the report and 2 support the recommendation. Once I've announced your name, please sit at the top of the horseshoe table. If a submitter is not present when their name is called, we will move on to the next speaker. I remind submitters there is a strict time limit of 2 minutes. Please commence the submission of your name and the suburb in which you reside. Our first speaker tonight will be Scott Patterson, who will be followed by Giles Pollock, and then Cameron Pollock.
Thank you, and I'm specifically talking about 9 Shakespeare Grove. The tree, I'm one of the neighbours there. Between that property and our property, there's a large right-of-way. This tree, a Moreton Bay fig, extends right over the laneway and then goes into our property as well. The branches drop a lot of fruit. It fills up the laneway with fruit. It doesn't get cleaned. It's slippery, it's hazardous, it's a nuisance. A big problem is that it attracts a lot of bats. The bats then do their droppings that drop into our swimming pool, all over windows. Children are meant to be playing in our private spaces, but unfortunately the bats, it really is quite revolting what they drop. The other thing is that the neighbour who owns the house just simply doesn't maintain the tree at all. The last time we had to get it pruned, it was 3 years ago, and myself, along with a couple of other neighbours, had to pay for it because she simply wouldn't do it. So it's dangerous, it's growing out of control. The trunk's very distorted because there have been other structures built around it. There's a new property next door, and they've managed to get some of the roots cut, but then it hasn't been trimmed accordingly. So we've got a real problem with it from a hygiene point of view, an odour point of view, and a lack of maintenance, which is causing a big problem. But the main thing is the fruit that's dropping from this tree is very slippery, and if it's not cleaned, it's presenting a real safety hazard in our view. So without a proper pruning plan, we would simply, we feel that it shouldn't be a protected tree. It's just going to make it more difficult. Right on the bell.
30 seconds spare. Are there any questions for our speaker? Scott, councillors. Councillor Senfield.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you, Mr Patterson. I'm wondering whether you might be able to speak to the amenity and health impacts that your family incurs.
Oh, it's a good question. We haven't had, I have to say we haven't had any direct health issues with it, but from my reading of what comes out of bats, it's not very pleasant. I think we'd all agree on that, but yeah, it's the droppings that you need to be cleaned, it's the fruit that keeps dropping and filling up our yard, and not to mention the what's meant to be a public right-of-way at the back. But from a health point of view, I can't say we've been sick from it, but I'd say it's presenting a risk. Absolutely. I don't think anyone... And I'm talking not just 1 or 2 bats, there's 100 every night when it's in season and it's hot. So it's not a very pleasant environment, no. Good question.
Councillor Ibuki.
Thank you, Mr Patterson. Can you just tell me about the neighbouring property on which that tree is located? Are there other trees on that property? Is there room for other trees to be planted in addition to that very problematic tree?
No, I don't think there's any other trees there from what I can see. The way I describe the property that sits a bit above us is it's a Victorian home, a very old Victorian, with a ramshackle type extension to it that's occurred over many years and probably at different stages. And it's literally been built around the tree, almost like a cuppy house around the tree. They did recently remove some, I guess what you'd call unapproved structures in assistance from the council, but that has grown around the tree and distorted the growth. You can see the whole trunk. In fact, the photo that's on your handout is showing the way that the trunk is now looking. But I don't think there's any room for anything else because she's literally built this property right back to the laneway. It was probably done without approval a long time ago.
Right, thank you.
But I'm not suggesting that the tree should be removed. I mean, I don't even know how you'd sort of do that and put something else in its place, but this tree is not being maintained and it's starting to present a risk.
Sorry, so are you saying that if it was maintained, it wouldn't be a problem to you? Are you saying that it just requires pruning? Yes.
I'm saying it really should be pruned back regularly. The current owner's not doing that, and it's presenting a problem because it's growing, as the months and years go by, this thing's getting bigger and bigger, becoming more of a problem.
And sorry, if it was pruned and cut back, wouldn't you still have a bat poo problem?
We would, but it'd probably be less of a problem.
Right, okay. Thank you for clarifying
Because the fruit that grows on these trees it's quite extraordinary. When it drops, it's like...
Right, thank you.
There's quite a lot of it.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thanks, Chair. A few of us councillors here are rapidly scrolling through our report to try to find the address and the tree. Could you please remind me which...
Yeah, 9 Shakespeare Grove. With the photos, I think it's on the first page or two in your handout. There's just one image of it, and it shows literally a picture of the trunk. It actually doesn't
show 300 images, so we're just trying to
rest
find...
of it.
Thank you.
So I think it's down the bottom of one of the pages.
While we wait, we might move to our next councillor, Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you. Mr Patterson, given the nature of this tree, have you raised the maintenance of it either with your neighbour directly or with council officers previously?
So we raised it with the neighbour directly about 3 years ago, expressed our concern along with a couple of other neighbours about the way it's growing and becoming bigger and bigger and attracting the bats, and we suggested pruning, to which she suggested she'd chain herself to the tree and wouldn't allow that to happen. And that's not, I'm not joking. So we finally got it through with, I think it was council who assisted with making it some changes there, but nothing's been done since then. That was 3 years ago. There's clearly no plan.
So if I may, so basically the issue is the failure of regular maintenance or regular tree management. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Scott? There are none. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Giles.
Good evening, everyone. My apologies for my voice. I'm currently quite unwell.
Giles, could you move a little bit closer to the microphone? Thank you.
Move the microphone closer. Is that better? Yeah. My apologies for my voice. I'm actually quite ill at the moment. I wish to speak. My name is Giles Pollock. I'm from the suburb of Kew, and I'm speaking in regards to the tree identified as ST1900101170 Monterey Cypress at 71 Stevenson Street in Kew. I am currently circulating a number of documents. There should be 4 of them for each person there. They are a longer version of what I'll be presenting on tonight. The short version is a series of dot points, and I welcome any questions. So, to start, the report submitted is actually missing an entire objection made by the owners of the tree. It has not been considered in the metrics in the report or in content, despite being submitted within the requisite time. The assessment of the tree itself was irregular. Assessment was undertaken initially in early February, with the arborist from Tree Dimensions attending the property and discussing the nomination with the owners. The owners advised the nomination was to be withdrawn. The owners nominated the tree. Despite being advised of the withdrawal of the nomination, another assessment was then undertaken without the owner's knowledge on March the 3rd. Information was then published publicly on the Boroondara website, which was untrue and disparaged the tree owners. When this was challenged and the prior assessments were considered tainted as a result, a third assessment was undertaken by Ironbark. This assessment by Ironbark was also tainted and irregular, as property owners were denied the opportunity to meet with, communicate with, or consult with the assessing arborist as per the original assessments and as per the assessment process itself. Nomination was made prior to changes to tree protection laws in 2024. We were advised at the time of nomination that it would likely be assessed in 2022, which did not occur. Had we known of these changes, we would not have nominated at all. The current irregularities are subject to ongoing investigations, and they are unresolved at this stage, and I believe it would be improper to consider the tree for inclusion at this time while the integrity of the tabled report is compromised. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for Giles? Councillor Tawney.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. So, in terms of the tree itself, do you have any issues with the tree?
No, honestly, no issues at all with the tree itself.
Yep. And are you currently maintaining that tree?
Yes, we have actively maintained that tree for about 45 years now. We have protected it, maintained it, fought for it for the best part of more than a decade in response to development activities. You'll note that the documents circulated there is one there labelled Tree Management Plan, which was approved by Boroondara Council in 2021. If you turn to the final page, there is Appendix 2, which shows a picture of the tree with a red line drawn through it. That was the approved pruning which was proposed for that tree and which we fought tooth and nail to stop. That was what prompted the tree to be nominated for inclusion on the significant tree register in the first place. And as we subsequently acquired the neighbouring property at enormous expense, we eliminated that threat ourselves. Apologies, my brain's a bit fuzzy at the moment. Yes, did that cover all of the matters in the question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pollock.
My apologies, thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Giles? There are none. Thank you, Giles.
Thank you.
We now move on to our next speaker, Cameron Pollock. Cameron will be followed by Jin Wang and James Plunkett.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm conscious that my brother will probably have answered some questions already that I was going to cover here. I do apologise if I'm repeating anything, and I'm happy to skip over if it's called out. My name's Cameron Pollock. I'm the owner of 69 Stevenson Street, the property neighbouring the nominated tree ST 190010, the Monterey Cypress Pine at 71 Stevenson Street. This tree was first nominated for Boroondara's significant tree register back in 2012, and Council's arborists assessed it at the time as not significant. Later, during the Boroondara Heritage Gap study in 2020, the same conclusion was reached about this tree, that it was neither historically significant nor contributory to the heritage status of 71 Stevenson Street. The tree was under threat for almost a full decade due to proposed development works that the council did support and approve. And as my brother mentioned, there was a tree management plan in 2021 that would have seen almost half of the tree lopped at the trunk along the boundary line of what is now my property, and almost 25% of its roots disturbed. My family spent $4.3 million to acquire 69 Stevenson Street with an aim to protecting that tree and protecting the heritage property at 71 Stevenson Street. That's more than the council's entire annual environmental budget, and that doesn't even include any funding for significant trees at this stage. So my question is this: why has it suddenly changed when two prior assessments found the tree not to be significant? The council's got a long record in that respect of not finding the tree significant, but trees don't gain heritage, community or cultural importance overnight. We withdrew our nomination for this tree's inclusion once the threat had been removed by us. But yet here we are. The ongoing restrictions and costs imposed by being listed on a significant tree register won't actually confer any significant public benefit that's not already there. Routine maintenance will cost $72 per permit. Any works, which could be as vague as me replacing my gardening watering system, which is in desperate need of that, or digging up to replant a dead shrub in my garden, for that matter, even essential services, all of which run through the tree protection zone that's been proposed, will require a $144 permit. Water and gas authorities, and I did check, both confirmed that they won't seek any such permits, nor will they take any responsibility for fines that the council might try to impose for any works that they carry out. The tree's already protected under council local laws as a canopy tree, and we've got a 45-year track record of looking after this tree at our own expense and engaging arborists for that fact. We're open to alternative arrangements if the council's willing to make them with us, so that we can affirm that this tree will be protected for the next 45 years to come. We're not going anywhere. But it doesn't need to be on a significant tree register. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, sorry. That's all. Thank you very much.
But, councillors, do we have any questions for Cameron? Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. Your specific concern relates to the cost. Is that the issue?
Cost and also overarching, red tape, essentially. Instead of me being able to be the responsible owner of my tree, as I have been the whole life that I've been, and my parents, my brother ultimately in the neighbouring property, will have to go and seek permission every single time. And I note that the permit process is subsidised by council, so it's not just our cost every single time we go and do it, it's the community's cost. but there's no benefit conferred to anyone for that. Just a whole lot of going around in circles to do something which we've been doing for so long already and want to keep doing.
Thanks.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Pollock, you indicated some willingness to consider other ways of protecting the tree outside of the tree protection local laws. Have you given any thought to what those mechanisms might be?
So not under the tree protection local laws entirely. We're certainly happy with it, with its current protections, which allows for consultation with the council and a necessary of a permit if you're working within 2 metres of its trunk. We don't want the full, I think it was 12 metres proposed tree protection zone around it, because that takes out all of my front yard, all of the neighbouring front yard as well. We're not planning to go anywhere. I am more than willing to sign any document that says that this tree can go straight onto the significant tree register if either property is ever put up for sale. But we have no intention of doing that in either case. We'll be here for the next 45 years and then some, and I hope to pass the property to my children one day as well.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Cameron? There are none. Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you very much.
Jin Wang. We'll just quickly check that Jin's not outside. But in the interim, we'll give James Plunkett a chance to speak.
Good evening. My name is James Plunkett and I live in Hawthorne East. I appear as the chairperson of the Owners Corporation Committee at 30 Ryburn Avenue, which is a block of 6 apartments. The trees I refer to are 8 Bhutan cypress trees listed for outstanding size and are referenced on pages 145 and 146 of the report. These are privately owned trees on 28 Ryburn Avenue. The Owners Corporation of 30 Ryburn Avenue opposed the listing of these trees due to significant damage to our driveway and stormwater drain caused by their tree root system. An assessment of damage rectification provided this July updated the costs of rectification to be $191,400. Further, legal communications have now commenced between us and the owners of 28 Ryburn Avenue. I wish to reinforce that the Owners Corporation's opposition to the listing of the trees due to the following. Listing of these trees may negatively impact our property rights during a time where we are entering a legal phase of our dispute with our neighbour over the damage. This listing may increase the complexity and cost of our dispute and reduce resolution options that may be available. I respectfully submit that a decision on these trees be deferred in the circumstances. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for James? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
How long a deferment would you be seeking?
I'm unfamiliar with the process of how long a deferment on these issues would be, but I'd potentially seek a 12-month period before revisiting the issue to see where the dispute resolution process has developed to.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillors, are there any final questions for James? James, there are none. Thank you.
Thank you. May I always raise one administrative note with the report that's outside of the submissions? I noted that there is a duplication of these trees in the report, listed once at page 145 to 146, correctly noted as owned by 28 Ryburn Avenue, and then incorrectly noted as the owners being 30 Ryburn Avenue, that's our property, at pages 196 to 197. So it does appear that there was an incorrect piece of information and a duplication of the trees. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, sir.
Now, Jin Wang is no longer going to be speaking tonight, which means our next speaker will be Peter Dulcas, followed by Patrick Houlihan, and then Rosemary Deacon.
Okay, thank you. My name's Peter Dolkus. I'm the property owner at 75 Riversdale Road and I reside in Carlton North. Earlier this year, 3 trees on my property were designated significant to be put on the significant tree register. Upon that notification, I engaged Urbis for town planning advice and an independent arborist, sustainable tree management, to provide arboricultural advice with regard to, we objected to 2 out of the 3 trees classified. With regard today, the significant tree designation has substantial planning implications for my property, conflicting with several strategic directions for the site. These include the residential growth zone Schedule 1, which encourages high density development, including apartments, and the site's interface with the Transport Road Zone 2, which supports intensive land use to support transport integration. The site is also proximate to the Glenferrie Hill Neighbourhood Centre, which has an expectation for increased use and development to maximise existing infrastructure, services and public transport. Within this context, designating 3 significant trees on a single site introduces disproportionate development control not applied to other properties along the street. My property will not be able to develop in the same way as the rest of the street when it evolves according to the relevant planning controls. The cumulative effect of the 3 trees being considered significant must be balanced with the site's strategic development potential as supported by Council's planning controls and policies. Therefore, I respectfully request the Council reconsider the inclusion of 2 of those 3 trees on the significant tree register. The incorrect identification and limited arboricultural merit of the trees, along with the constraints they impose on future development, justify further consideration for their exclusion from the register.
Peter, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Yep, that's it.
Councillors, are there any questions for Peter? Councillor Tawney.
Thank you, Mr. Dolkus. I'm just looking at a satellite picture of the site. So there are 3 trees. So you're saying is it the 2 to the rear of the site? Which trees did you?
So towards the rear of the site, behind the home, there's a large tree that sits in the middle there that crosses over the neighbour's property and that. That's one of the trees. And there were 2 at the front, I believe. And one of those trees was identified as being misclassified, and it would impact the potential to develop the site at a later stage.
So I'm just looking at the picture. So the 2 trees are right at the front of the property near the footpath.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's one in the middle of the property.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you. Mr. Dolkus, you said that there was incorrect classification, and I wonder if you could just specifically outline what's incorrect?
Yep, so according to the independent report from Sustainable Tree Management, 2 of the trees were classified as river red gums, so that's ST 24 006 156 and the same numbers with 157. They were, the independent report identified them as manna gum and southern blue gum.
Thank you. And in relation, you're saying 2 ought to be removed, specifically which 2?
Those 2.
Okay.
So on page 215, at the bottom of 215 and 2 on the top of 216, we've identified the 2 trees in question that we object to being put on the significant tree register.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Peter? There are none. Thank you, Peter. Patrick William. I apologise if I haven't got your last name right there, Patrick.
That's all right. Thank you. Good evening and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Patrick Houlihan
and I reside at Walpole Street, Kew. I've submitted a formal objection against the immediate neighbouring tree at 63 Walpole Street, Kew, being added to the significant tree register on page 180 of your papers. The objection is based on the advice of a professional arborist, Mr. Alex Pinninger of AP Trees, and I've previously submitted his formal report. Instead of being a significant tree, I propose this remains a canopy tree with all the protection that affords. In summary, the tree has been incorrectly listed as an Atlas cedar, where it is actually a common pine tree, which is considered an environmental weed species in many councils surrounding Melbourne CBD. While I believe this is not the case in Boroondara, it does put the type of tree in context. There is evidence of damage to the footpath and driveway from roots in front of 63, where it is located, which is beginning to extend to our boundary. There is the ever-present danger of pine cones falling on pedestrians or cars and the existing damage to the footpath, which is used by residents and visitors to the Bapcare Aged Care Home. It is the arborist's opinion that reclassification would make future management works on the tree relating to any root-related or other issues that may arise at my property more difficult than necessary, particularly considering the species of tree. Finally, upon any reclassification, the tree protection zone would be extended from the current 2 metres for a canopy tree to 15 metres. For reference, my property boundary is approximately 5.4 metres from the trunk of the tree. Hence, this change would move the tree protection zone into the middle of our building and create an enduring obligation for years to come over the use of our property, which seems disproportionate given that it is a common pine tree. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Perfectly timed, Patrick. Just on 2 minutes. Councillors, are there any questions for Patrick? Councillor Tawney.
Mr Houlihan, thank you for your presentation. So you're saying that you don't object to the tree itself, but just the restrictions around it being a significant tree?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the tree itself is a great tree, and it's been there. It's probably 100 years old, 100-year-old pine tree. And so it's in our neighbour's yard with the 2 metre protection zone. Even as a canopy tree, it cannot be removed without council approval. It's just as you then put in place a 15 metre radius, not radius across to our property, suddenly you're in the middle of our property. And given when we make these changes, they last for decades to come once you're on the significant tree. Not that we have any plans now, but if we wanted to knock that part of the home down, it's a whole new set of onerous conditions that are not there now, let alone more immediate short-term issues. So I'm just simply saying the extension from a 2 metre tree protection zone to the 15 is actually my core issue, let alone those other arborist comments on issues for the council to consider around public safety on the footpath.
Councillors, are there any final questions for Patrick? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. I'm looking also at a Google map search, and it reveals a number of signs on the front of that property at 63 Walpole. It may well be an old photo, but it appears there's some construction site classification there, etc. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so it's actually on property 63 that was for sale, but the owners decided not to proceed with that sale. And we're doing some renovations at the moment on the interior of the property at 61A. To the left of it. I'm not sure what photo you have. Yep. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Patrick. I think that exhausts our questions.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rosemary Deakin. Rosemary will be followed by Mark Levy.
I'm the Secretary of the Owners Corporation and here to present our concerns about the tree. I don't own a property there. I have no pecuniary interest whatsoever in the property in that respect. I just do the maintenance. Now, we have no objection to the...
Excuse me, could you please just let us know which tree you're talking about?
Oh, sorry. I was thinking you knew all about it. There's two trees. There's the ST20/17138, and the other one is...
Just the property address would assist, please.
Oh, sorry, 70 to 70A, Church Street, Hawthorn. 70A. There's actually no such thing as 70A, but the council persists. It's 70 according to the to the title. Now, the one we're more concerned about is the plane tree, not so much the lemon-scented gum. The trees are currently the canopy trees, not significant. We would like to retain them as canopy trees in order to be able to afford appropriate maintenance for them. We've done extensive maintenance on the property, repairing sewer and underground drains, etc., damaged by both trees, but we've retained the trees because we really want to keep them. We have a current maintenance problem. We have to remove 3 parking bays and pedestrian walkways, and the current root zone, which we're dealing with in our permit, is a 2 metre from the tree trunk. But a change in the status to significant will move the plane tree to an 11.538 metre zone, which will add significantly to the cost. Now, we're undertaking this work in an area where the tree roots have obviously spread over time. It's interfered with, it's created damage to the building structure, step cracking and vertical cracking. But our task at the moment is to improve or to reduce the hazards for people trying to get to cars and into the apartments. And we just have a number of trip hazards which has created a liability apart from anything else. So we're happy with the canopy status, and we'd appreciate if that would remain, and we'll continue to maintain the tree as we've done, certainly in my experience the last 12 years.
Rosemary, I might have to ask you to wrap up. I apologise. Councillors, are there any questions for Rosemary? Councillor Friend-Pereira?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. So just clarifying, the Owners Corporation in this case is happy to retain the trees as canopy trees?
Yes, absolutely.
And your primary concern is that if moving to significant trees, the additional sort of restrictions and costs associated with works?
Yes. And we have a current application available. We haven't started work on it, and we obtained that just before the significant category was imposed or proposed. Anything else?
Are there any more questions for Rosemary? Rosemary, there are none. Thank you.
Okay.
Our final speaker objecting tonight is Mark Levo. That's final speaker objecting.
Good afternoon, good evening rather, folks. Mark Levy from St James Park in Hawthorn. I just want to acknowledge before I start how much I appreciate seeing local democracy in action here tonight. It's no small thing to have a space where community voices are heard, ideas are debated openly, and decisions are made with transparency. So thank you to the councillors, staff and fellow residents for the time, effort and goodwill that you all bring to the process. I'm talking about the same tree that Mr. Patterson spoke about, the Moreton Bay fig at 9 Shakespeare Grove in Hawthorn. The tree is a draw for a colony of megabats, certainly scores and perhaps as many as 100 at a time. The presence of megabats brings a great deal of noise and damaging droppings, but I also accept that the bats need habitat. The bigger issue for me is the tree's unmanaged growth and the public impacts that causes. The tree at 9 Shakespeare Grove extends approximately 12 metres along our western boundary, overhang by up to 1 metre, dropping significant amounts of fruit into our property. More importantly, it extends right across the adjoining lane for about 15 metres, creating a continual and heavy fall of fruit in season. Apart from the occasional cleanups by council, the debris is left to rot, creating a slip hazard, attracting pests, and impacting the safe and pleasant use of the laneway. From what we can observe, the tree receives little to no pruning or structured maintenance. It's extremely large, continuing to grow unchecked and dominating more of the skyline each year. Without regular and proper management, its size and impacts will only increase, creating both public safety concerns and ongoing nuisance for the surrounding area. Our submission here rests on the premise that the listing of this tree on the Significant Trees Register makes it less likely that the tree will be properly maintained due to the requirements associated with registration. From the submission, that also appears to be the view of the person whose land the tree is on. We acknowledge that it may not be within Council's bailiwick to ensure that the tree is well maintained, though please correct me if I'm wrong about that, but we still ask that the tree is not listed. Thank you.
Right on time. Thank you, Mark. Councillors, are there any questions for Mark? There are none. Thank you, Mark. We did have one written submission, and it's been asked that I read it out tonight. This submission is from James Pollock and Dr. Close, AM. Sandra Close, correction. The owners of 71 Stevenson Street, Kew, and own a cypress tree in question. Mr. Pollock and Dr. Close apologise for not attending this meeting, as we are elderly and find this latest matter extremely stressful, given the many years of stress to which we have already been subjected regarding our home and tree. The question of whether our cypress tree is of significance and needs protection has been going on since 2012, that is for more than 13 years. On 2 occasions, the council arborist refused to classify the tree as significant. It should also be noted that nomination was formally withdrawn on 6 February 2025. This was reiterated in our objection in May. Given the change to the tree protection local law since the nomination was made, it is unreasonable to disregard our withdrawal of nomination. Furthermore, our objection has not been included in or considered in the report submitted. This current matter is now the subject of a Freedom of Information application and also a formal complaint. It is essential that the owners, as the protectors of the tree for the last 45 years, must receive the FOI information requested, digest it, and have the opportunity to respond. Any decision on our cypress must be delayed for the time being. Given the 13 years this whole matter has been on foot, a few more weeks is of little consequence. Councillors are welcome to come and inspect the tree and give us the opportunity to provide some background and context. Yours sincerely, James Pollock and Dr. Sandra Close, AM. We have 2 final speakers tonight, speaking in support of the motion, the officer's recommendations, correction. Luke Maloney and Ray Peck. We'll start with Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Luke Maloney, Deep Dean. I just wish to speak in support of my nomination for a tree at the rear of 1 Deep Dean Road. I reside at number 3 Deep Dean Road. My neighbour, Jeffrey Davey, lived at 1 Deep Dean Road for 50 years and passed away early this year. He reports that when he first moved in, the tree was just a sapling. Now it is the dominant tree in the area bounded by Burke Road, Peveril, Deep Dean Road and Deep Dean Place. It provides a refuge for birds and other wildlife and provides shade for at least 3 properties. The objection, I understand, is based on the premise that the tree has a lean and it drops a lot of big branches. I've lived at my house for 14 years and I can attest that neither of these are true. The tree does grow at an angle but then straightens up. It is extremely healthy and it is right at the rear of the property and at the very rear of my property as well. Over the months from November to March, the tree loses all its bark, which is just very thin, and then it comes out with a beautiful salmon-coloured trunk for the next few months. It then flowers, and then it drops a whole lot of gum nuts and leaves, and it drives me mad because it all ends up in my pool. But once I put up with that, for the next 9 months of the year, it sits there and does not do a thing. It has not dropped any large branches in the time that I've been there. And in that time, there have been a couple of very ferocious storms, resulting in 2 big trees in that same area blowing over. One in Deep Dean Place, a golden ash, and the second, a large elm tree at the front, a council tree at the front of 3 Deep Dean Road. Our tree has weathered both of those storms and remains extremely healthy and a wonderful asset to that pocket of Deep Dean. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Councillors, are there any questions for Luke? There are none. Thank you, Luke. And our final speaker for tonight, Ray Peck.
Thank you, Councillor Baillieu, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. It's wonderful to be discussing nature strips, biodiversity and significant trees. I'm Ray Peck. I've lived in Hawthorn for 23 years. I'm speaking on behalf of the Lighter Footprints Forests Working Group. Several of our members are here tonight. The working group recently organised the Urban Forests event, kindly supported by council officers Chris Spencer and Amy Shaw. Several councillors who are here tonight also attended. The event was fully booked and shows the strong interest in Boroondara's urban trees. Thank you to the officers for the comprehensive report on the Significant Tree Register Update 2025. We agree that the inclusion of these 313 nominated significant trees will improve Council's capacity to meet the targets set in the Boroondara Tree Canopy Strategy. We also support the statement that significant trees within the city of Boroondara provide health benefits, habitat for fauna, preserve history, and improve local amenity and property values, generally speaking. We were surprised to read in the report that as Council's local law applies only to private land, no further permission is required once a decision is made to remove a significant tree on Council's land. Why is this? And does it mean that significant trees on Council's land are less protected than those on private land? We were shocked to read that 8 significant trees have been illegally removed or damaged requiring removal. We were pleased to see that given the high value of significant trees to our community and our canopy cover, it is envisaged that incentive programs to assist significant tree owners and affected neighbours will be prioritised. In conclusion, we have 2 points. Firstly, in regard to cost. We believe that property owners who host significant trees on their properties should have minimum maintenance costs, if any. For example, waiving application fees for pruning and other maintenance seems reasonable. Secondly, the nomination process. While the community, and this is important, I think, while the community nomination of significant trees works okay, it is somewhat ad hoc and random. It does not reflect the necessary urgency to protect the tree canopy. Given the pressure on the tree canopy, it would be much better if the council undertook a systematic and prompt coverage of the Boroondara local government area to identify every tree that meets the significant tree criteria. This could be achieved by training up a small army of casuals, university students or local volunteers and assigning them an area to survey. The cost would be small and the outcome would be far superior. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Councillors, are there any questions for Ray? There are none. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Unless... councillors, we now return to officers for matters arising.
Chair, I'm a bit flummoxed. I have an issue that's come up and I need to consult with governance as to how to proceed. Can I request, and I believe the appropriate thing might be a quick adjournment motion so I can quickly confer with the governance team?
Do you have a seconder?
Happy to second.
I put the matter to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We are now adjourned. Just wanted to turn to the floor tonight. Was there anyone else here tonight that wanted to speak before council? There was? Sit down, introduce yourself and the suburb you're from.
Apologies, everyone probably wants to go home, so I'll make this quick. My name is Jason Barry, and I'm here in support for expanding the significant tree register. Trees are essential as they provide shade, improve air quality, and support biodiversity. However, my recent experience highlights why flexibility in the system is essential. We applied to remove a canopy tree as part of a passive design sustainable home renovation, which aligns with the Council's Climate Action Plan and broader sustainability goals. The tree's location blocks the sunlight needed for effective solar panel operation and restricts the design potential for a sustainable home. We're currently in discussions with the Council's Planning Department regarding the refusal of our application. This highlights the need to assess tree removal applications in context, especially when the project supports sustainability, safety, and responsible development. An overly inflexible process can sometimes unintentionally limit climate-friendly initiatives the Council aims to encourage. We're not seeking to weaken protections. We value and support significant trees. What we're asking for is a balanced, integrated approach that preserves our canopy goals while also enabling energy efficiency, solar access, climate resilience, and safeguarding properties from costly structural damage caused by trees. By ensuring what is implemented is fair, transparent, and aligned with planning processes, we can protect our trees while empowering residents to create sustainable, safe, and future-ready homes.
Councillors, any questions for our speaker? Councillor Friend Pereira. Councillor Tawney.
Hi, Ms. Baring, thank you. Sorry, is this a tree that's on the list to go on the significant tree register?
No, it's not. It's just a canopy tree.
Okay, so it's not a matter for the report tonight?
No, it's not, no. So,
okay.
Yeah, just alluding to the fact that I think the system, we can fix it up, make it a bit more efficient, because my concern is that we're trying to go about the right way, get a tree removal process approved, then go to planning. rather than submit our plan and then it goes back and there's a delay of, say, 3 to 6 months, redocumenting consultant costs if the tree was rejected through that process.
And in this case, what kind of tree is it?
It's a liquid amber. A liquid amber?
Yep.
Yep, so it's an exotic tree.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Tawney has largely asked the questions I had, but just to be clear, this is a canopy tree and you're proposing a single development on a block requiring...
Yeah, it's just a renovation to the back of our property, yes. Yep.
And do you need anything other than a building permit? Do you need town planning approval?
It's heritage house, so there'll be a planning process as well. Yep.
And the trees, what, to the north or to the east? Or?
So it's to the west. So our issue is that we've got, to the east, we've got a pitch roof. So we don't actually get any sunlight to the rear of the house until, say, 10 o'clock in the morning. And then we've got trees to the west and the north, which block all sunlight. So we really get a window for sunlight of 10 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Councillor Abuki.
Thank you. So that's a bit of a climate moral dilemma, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, correct.
So just in your situation, you want to install solar, you've got a canopy tree. Is there an alternative? And I know that we're not talking specifically here about a nominated tree, but do you have a solution that would cover both a significant tree on your property and the solar panels that you want to put up?
Yeah, so we can reorientate the back of the house, which means where the canopy tree is, that's where the solar panels could be positioned. And then that allows for northern light and the western sun, so that'll maintain the passive cooling of the house.
So you've identified a solution?
Yes, we have, yes.
Right,
Yep.
thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for our speaker? There are none, but I believe one of our staff members might have a question for you once you depart.
Okay, right.
Thank you. Are there any final people? Yes, there is.
Sorry. My name's Paul Morgans, and the trees that I'm not very happy with are at the rear of a Beckett Street queue. I live in Kew. My problem is...
Sorry, what numbers, please?
Number 3, Beckett Street queue. There's 3 trees that have been nominated, and they're in a cluster. Two of them are canopy trees, and they're within approximately under a foot of my boundary. So most of the canopy of the tree is over my house, and the roots, no doubt, are under my house. I can't have solar on my roof because of this. The trees drop so much litter and branches, and one of the main issues is there's never been any maintenance on the trees. The owner of that property won't do any maintenance, so I've got dead branches in the trees. I've had 2 broken tiles. My area was recently struck by a branch. It's a bit of a nightmare. But the worst aspect is, by putting them on the significant tree register, the limitations on me doing even any minor maintenance on sort of pruning is a nightmare. So all I'm saying is I'm quite happy with the trees. They're nice trees. They're a nuisance, but I'd prefer that they were not on the, just had the classification as a canopy tree.
Thank you, Paul.
Also, when I submitted my objection, I also submitted a petition from 6 of the neighbours who all agreed about the branch problems, the danger to the pedestrians in the back lane, and that's another thing. Nowadays, all these lanes, people are putting houses in lanes, and they should be named. The lanes should be named, not between Fernhurst Grove and Princes Street.
Thank you, Paul. I might have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, that's okay.
However,
Yeah.
some councillors may have questions for you. There are none, but at least one councillor is very glad that you... Oh, Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, has the petition been registered with us?
Well, I did. I brought them in. I brought photographs, my letter, and the petition was all came in.
Thanks,
That wasn't, I noticed that wasn't, because I just noticed tonight, it wasn't mentioned on the, comments.
No worries. I don't recall having seen it, but we'll follow up. Thanks.
And thank you for your comments about laneway naming. I'll give one last chance for any last-minute speakers if anyone's keen. There are none, so we will return to officers for matters arising.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Council officers note submissions relating to tree maintenance cost, pruning, tree risk and safety, and dispute of grading of significance have been addressed in the report prepared for this evening. In terms of the other matters raised, the following responses are provided. In terms of property damage, the Tree Protection Local Law Assessment Guidelines set out consideration of applications based on damage under Assessment Guideline F, which applies to both canopy and significant trees. In these matters, supporting documentation from appropriately qualified practitioners, such as an engineer or plumbing report, as relevant to the matters raised in the application, are important. In terms of appropriateness, a tree is considered for removal based on its arboricultural merit, and this is regardless of whether the tree is a canopy tree or a significant tree. The consideration is relevant under Clause 12 of the local law, where a significant tree is being considered for removal, and the relevant adopted assessment guidelines consider things such as proximity of trees to buildings, growing conditions of the tree, and whether the impacts can be mitigated through pruning. Where a planning application is afoot or a planning permit has been issued, a separate permission is still required under the local law, noting that the processes run in parallel. Where the removal of a significant tree is sought, the adopted assessment guidelines enable the assessing officer to give consideration to other matters which are relevant to the application, such as other approvals. And in terms of matters of health, it is not considered that there have been any health issues raised through submissions which warrant withdrawal of nominations. Indeed, the assessment guidelines for both canopy trees and significant trees make provision for the consideration of human health and safety where a local law permit seeks removal of a tree. Thank you.
And if I could just, through you, Chair, add further to that, we are aware of some of the process issues raised by some of the submitters tonight, who we are working with them in relation to their further requests for clarification. We have also identified some further feedback from the independent arborists engaged to undertake the independent review of the trees nominated, and we will review that feedback following the comments made this evening.
Councillors, are there any questions of officers? Councillor Nolan.
Thanks to the officers. Mr. Elburn, just on your last sort of comment towards the end there, in terms of any ongoing discussion in terms of members of the public that presented here tonight, are there any particular issues that you might seek to temporarily take out of the nomination for tonight to enable you to properly address those specific issues?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. There hasn't been any information presented that changes our position on the merits of any of the trees put forward, save for a tree that has been identified incorrectly. Having said that, the arborist is still recommending that it is worthy of inclusion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add to that to say that there might not be new matters raised, but officers will need to think about what is being presented tonight. What's being put to you tonight is the recommendation for this to go to a full meeting of council for a decision. So between now and then, we'll need to reflect on what has been said and contemplate whether that would lead to any suggested changes for you to consider. I might also just make the point that we've heard reference to heritage tonight, and there is a difference between heritage and significant trees. They're not the same thing. They might on occasion turn out to be the same thing, but they're actually different.
Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, I'd like to ask the officers just to confirm, if I'm getting this correct from the report, that of the 314 recommended additions to the significant tree register, 61 of those were objected to, and I suspect all of them by the owners. But could you just confirm that 61 of the 314 recommended additions are objected to by the owners?
Through you, Chair. Officers do confirm that there were 61 objections received in relation to the nomination process through community consultation. However, at this stage, we're unable to confirm how many of those relate to property owners and how many were received from affected neighbours. We can confirm that as a follow-up.
Thank you.
Councillor Tawney.
Thank you, officers. Thank you to everyone who's spoken. But the permits, it seems to be the kind of common theme coming through here. Do we have a sense of, if we remove fees for all permits, what the cost, I mean, is that a massive cost? I mean, would we expect that, you know, I can see that you've tried to keep the fees low, like $70, but $70 plus about 144 and multiple people, it feels like that is part of the issue as well as maintaining the tree. So I'm just wondering about the impact of potentially removing fees.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. We did indicate in the report that there's some options in relation to providing support for owners of significant trees. Now, we haven't actually modelled up the cost of some of those options, but I wouldn't imagine the cost of not charging for pruning applications as significant. I don't have the typical number of applications we receive for pruning in a year at hand, but we can certainly provide some further detail in relation to that.
That would be useful. And through you, Chair, we've heard about a couple of trees that are kind of nuisance trees, but also maybe not being well maintained. And I understand from the local law, there's a requirement to kind of manage and maintain trees on private land. Is that for significant trees only or canopy trees as well?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It's our understanding that there are some obligations to property owners under the amenity local law. However, we don't have those at hand.
Okay, and one final question. With the TPZ, it's a fixed calculation. Is it possible that it's a tree by tree, site by site basis where there's some issues where it goes deeply into someone else's property? Or is it, I mean, I realise it's determined based on a technical need to protect the tree, but is there any flexibility in that for particular cases?
Yeah, the tree protection zone is a calculation based on the circumference of the tree, so it will be unique and specific to each tree. So it's not flexible.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Again, picking up on some of the themes that came through from many of the submissions tonight, many of whom were supportive of retaining trees for their canopy value and the like, but it appears to me we're often concerned about the cost and the difficulty in maintaining significant trees that might hang over their land or may be on their land, and their ability to be able to prune those trees. I just want to understand from the officers what measures you would look at when an owner of a significant tree sought to prune it. I'm looking at page 130 of the report, which talks about some measures used to remove a tree from a significant tree status, such as unreasonable risk, I guess, to life and limbs, and also structural damage. Are these the sorts of measures that would be looked at when an owner of a significant tree sought to prune it? I'm just wondering if we might be able to give our submitters some comfort that if they have genuine concerns about the tree damaging their property or falling onto them, whether that would be satisfactory for you to approve a pruning regime for those trees.
Through you, Chair. The Council adopted assessment guidelines under the Tree Protection Local Law outline the considerations for officers when considering an application for pruning. It is my understanding that if pruning is done in accordance with the relevant Australian standard, then an application would be supported.
Could you just perhaps elaborate for me what those measures might be that are looked at when one seeks to prune their tree? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that local law.
Through you, Chair. The measures that are considered in respect of significant tree pruning are whether the branches to be pruned are dead or dying, whether they pose a risk that cannot be alleviated through other means of removal, whether the branches to be removed are causing structural damage to private or public assets, whether pruning can be carried out to comply with other legislation, and whether pruning will be done in accordance with the relevant Australian standard.
Thanks very much, that was helpful.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you. My first question follows on directly from my colleague, Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith. In the case of a significant tree overhanging a neighbour's property and the neighbour wants to undertake the pruning, how, just to add to the question, the procedural question that Councillor Osborne-Smith asked, how do we go about that? Or what could you articulate that process and the payment of presumably the issues here? A fee needs to be paid by the neighbour. And what consultation or what process does council undertake in relation to the tree owner? And in the case if there's a discrepancy of view between the tree owner and the neighbour, we've heard quite a few people saying, well, trees are not being maintained to an adequate standard, and there's other references in the report. you can take it on notice if it's necessary and we can deal with it when it comes back.
Perhaps, Mr Chair, whilst the staff are conferring, which he's about to do, I might just mention that our capacity to compel is not really there. And so you are in fact looking for cooperation in relation to that particular issue, where a neighbour is not maintaining a tree. And I understand why the comments are being made tonight from that perspective, from some of the presenters we've heard from. There's an interesting mix of legislation, of course, here, because there are also rights for neighbours to prune trees hanging over their property, and the local law sets in train some other considerations which need to be applied, and I hope now you have a response to the question. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. An application made by a neighbour to prune a significant tree not on their property must be done with the consent of the tree's owner, but the person making the application is the one who pays the relevant fee.
And that's specifically for significant trees and is not the case in respect of a canopy tree, correct?
Through you, Chair, yes, that's correct.
And just on this theme, but somewhat related, there is a resident in relation to 1 Howard Street, Glen Iris, page 202. It's not that important because I'm going to make the point. A neighbour who supports a significant tree is concerned about the maintenance and notes that they've had to list their neighbour's tree on their insurance policy, but they are unable to get a arborist report on the health of the tree. Is there, I presume the answer is we can't compel an owner to undertake a report on the health of the tree. Is there anything in that? But I just want to double check that that's the case, or whether there is any ability of council to require an arborist report, even if it's at the expense of the neighbour.
Through you, Chair, the short answer is no. However, it is the legal requirement of all property owners to ensure that their trees are safe. We would also note that council arborists are available if an application is made to go and inspect a tree, and as part of that service would undertake a risk assessment.
But a neighbour can't request that of the neighbour's tree that overhangs their property?
Through you, Chair. No, we're unable to compel that.
And one final question. Could office, this is in relation to one of the presenters, Peter Dalkas, whose property has 3 trees nominated for significant tree status within presumably an activity area. And the concern that with a 15-metre radius, the whole site becomes undevelopable. Just in theory, could you explain how the process of an application for redevelopment on such a site might go ahead with significant trees, and whether it would effectively sterilise the site or not?
Through you, Chair, it would ultimately turn on the relevant planning controls that apply to the site and the consideration of trees in a planning application. We do note that the planning permit process and the tree protection local law are separate processes that run concurrent with each other. And so even if a planning permit were to be granted for development, a separate application would need to be made under the tree protection local law.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
I think the director, Chair, was going to add a comment in relation to the point. I'd love to hear what our council director has to say.
Thanks, Chair. If I may just very briefly draw attention to the fact that we're out on consultation at the moment to consider tree protection under the planning scheme. And ultimately, if that is obtained, it would actually make the consideration of retention of trees and any development outcome a holistic assessment that would balance out housing objectives and the tree retention obligations. So that's actually one of the benefits of bringing the tree protection under the planning scheme, is that you can take a more broader, holistic perspective on planning outcomes.
Councillor Friend Pereira.
Just foreshadow that I'd like to move a motion.
Councillor Ibuki.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just had a quick question. A few of the presenters tonight requested whether the trees could be downgraded from significant to canopy. I'm just interested if we have ever done that in the past, and under what circumstances, if any, we might consider that as an option.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm not aware if that has been an outcome of previous nomination processes, but at the end of the day, we are considering the inclusion of the trees case by case against the National Trust criteria. It would be difficult to form a view that it meets that criteria, but then not continue in putting it forward onto the register.
Councillor Sinfield.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions of clarification. Can a person apply for a permit to prune a significant tree for a tree that is not on their property, for their neighbour's property or elsewhere?
Through you, Chair, the short answer is yes. As part of that process, the council would seek consent of the tree's owner. So if a neighbour was making an application, they would need to make that application with the consent of the tree's owner.
Thanks. Is there a mechanism, whether it's through a Section 32 or similar, how we would notify a landowner that a tree on the adjacent to their property would be on the significant tree register? If a property changed hands, if I lived next door to Councillor Nolan and I moved in and there was a significant tree on his property and I moved in and thought, that's overhanging, I'm just going to go and get my chainsaw and prune it to the fence line, is there a presumption that I should know that that tree is significant? Or do we have a mechanism to formally notify?
Perhaps if it assists council officers, I may be able to assist with this. If I may, through you, Chair, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of sale of land is that material facts need to be disclosed in the Section 32, so I would suspect that a significant tree on a neighbour's property may constitute a material fact. That's just would be my understanding.
Chair, whilst the officers are arriving at a response there, I might also add that the inclusion of the significant tree register on the planning scheme will ensure that they are included on the Section 32. So that's another clear benefit of that process, that it's clear and explicit in the Section 32 if we are to achieve that in the planning scheme. The broader point around the obligation on a landowner to make notification, or even an adjoining property owner affected by a significant tree making an obligation, is a property contractual matter. Again, that's not something that we can oblige them to make that notification, but is certainly an expectation that it would be a material fact that should be declared.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, can I just add that I think it's a really important point being raised, and when this report comes to Council for a decision, we ought to contemplate a process by which people are formally notified. I think that's really important. Everyone should understand the particular pieces of legislation which apply to them as property owners. So we can make that part of the consideration which comes before you with the report.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful for us to make those decisions, but also for property owners moving forward, so they don't inadvertently make decisions absent the information. Following the question by Councillor Franco earlier, do we have knowledge at this juncture as to how the state may regard the significant tree register absent the next step of putting it into planning scheme? If a property had a significant tree and was in the immediate catchment zone of an activity centre?
The state government's role in the significant tree register is limited to a gazettal process only, so they're not actually considering the merits of what we're putting forward here. Now, through the planning scheme process, as we elect to include these trees in the planning scheme and for protection under the planning scheme, there'll be a submissions process, and a panel or minister will ultimately need to weigh up the balancing act there of trees that might be in an area that's prioritised for development.
So as a follow-up, if I may, as it currently stands, without the additional steps of putting it into the planning scheme, the current hierarchy of controls, the state declaring a property within a catchment zone and therefore being certain, as a right, development activities that can take place there, do we know how a significant tree would be regarded in that hierarchy of controls?
Through you, Chair, as Mr. Elbaugh noted earlier, the tree protection local law is a separate process to the planning application process, and so it would be considered separate to any planning application. However, in terms of considerations that officers must have to a significant tree where a planning permit has been granted, or a building permit, the tree protection local law adopted assessment guidelines do do direct officers to consider what other development approvals already exist. So an officer assessing an application to remove a significant tree would still need to consider other development approvals that have already been obtained by a landowner.
Thanks, I'll leave my questions there.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just want to draw people's attention to page 135, where officers acknowledge the costs that can be incurred for management of mature trees. And I think we all acknowledge, the costs, if I may, to people who have these significant and canopy trees. And just note that council and councillors are looking at a number of models which are laid out there, 4 models on page 135. I've got a question. It says that other councils have implemented a small dollar amount, and this might be a small step towards a journey where we socialise more of the cost. But would that be a decision for council, or is that decision would then have to go up to the Victorian government, or can we make that decision ourselves?
There are some considerations and legal requirements if you're looking at a reimbursement under rates, so we'd need to get some advice there. In terms of reducing our fees, that would be something that can be done through a budget process.
Yeah, I realise it's complex. There's a number of models there, so I'm happy to take that discussion later on. Thank you.
Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify two things. I want to clarify something that Councillor Nolan just said. I don't think we are currently considering any options. I know they were mentioned in the report, but there's no... I don't believe the officers are preparing any report currently to consider any options. To do that, we would have to obviously potentially add it to this decision. Could that be please clarified? Because Councillor Nolan seemed to me mean that we're looking at that. We're not looking at that. It has been just mentioned in the report. And I also want to foreshadow a motion with respect to Councillor Friend-Pereira Mine's an additional 2 points to the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Pattis, I can confirm that tonight councillors are considering submissions from the community. The options are not here for consideration or decision tonight. There will be a report made to a meeting of council at which officers will be canvassing options and also making a recommendation.
Thank you.
Councillor Tawney.
Just a quick question, further to Councillor Bookie's question. Would you have a sense of many or most or all of these trees that have been nominated for significant tree status already be canopy trees by definition?
Through you, Chair, that's correct, and it's our understanding that all of the trees that have been nominated to be elevated to significant tree status are already canopy trees.
And can you just clarify again, because it's getting late, exactly the 1 or 2 things that would then change if they went from canopy to significant?
So through your Chair, you would need a permit for pruning, and the trigger for a permit for doing works would be the tree protection zone and not the 2 metre that applies for a canopy tree.
I think the question being asked is different. So what is it about a canopy tree which would move it from a canopy tree to a significant tree? What are the differences between the two?
Through you, Chair. So the assessment criteria is that which is outlined by the National Trust of Victoria, and among other things it considers size, age, uniqueness of species. I believe the others are outlined in the report prepared.
Thank you.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for my continued line of questions, and I'll try to make this brief. One of the submissions tonight was in relation to a litigation matter that was on foot between the owners of one property and their neighbours regarding specifically trees, I assume some sort of liability issue. And the question was, well, the request was sought to potentially defer the registration of the particular tree to a significant tree pending the resolution of that litigation. Could you advise if there's any problems with doing this, and whether the change of status of a tree during a litigation process is of significance to that case or not? I hope that question made sense.
Through you, Chair, Councillor Osborne-Smith, can I just confirm, did you make reference to litigation?
Sorry, what was the...
Did you make reference to litigation in your question?
Yes.
And on the basis that there's litigation on foot or that is being contemplated?
I understood from one of the submissions tonight that litigation was on foot.
Yes.
Between an owner and a neighbour regarding trees on the boundary, and a request was sought to defer the classification of that tree from a canopy tree to a significant tree pending resolution of that litigation. And I just wanted to understand whether there would be any concerns from council officers in delaying that registration, or whether they felt that perhaps that made no bearing on the impact of the...
Yes, thank you. I think that I would like to understand the nature of the litigation before we were to comment on what the outcome might be. We need to be able to answer that question for you though, so let's take that on notice and make sure that we can.
Yeah, they're probably 28 Ryburn. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any final questions for officers tonight? There are none. I'm in search of a motion as a result, and I return to Councillor Friend Pereira, who foreshadowed a motion earlier.
Yeah, I'm going to withdraw my foreshadowing and let Councillor Pattis proceed.
Councillor Pattis, you're next in line with a foreshadowed motion.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank Councillor Friend Pereira for letting me move a motion which is the officer's recommendation plus two additional items which are up on the screen now, and I'd like to speak to it when it's my turn.
Councillor Pattis, do you have a seconder?
Just let him read it.
Could we see the motion? Can I ask a question of clarification through you, Chair, to governance?
Of course.
I'm wondering whether the final part of clause 4 would prejudice a decision in the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Through you, Chair. If Council resolved to make a resolution, knowing that this resolution was in place, it could override this resolution if it chose to. Assuming this resolution was made.
Councillor Franco.
I'd like to ask a question of clarification as well in relation to motion 3 or the third point. Firstly, the wording is not great because it repeats options to support options, but is it, and maybe it's for Councillor Pattis to answer, is this purely support for the owners of canopy and significant trees, or, as we've heard tonight, the neighbours who sometimes face costs associated with that.
Chair, would it be helpful if I speak to the motion first?
Councillor Pattis, you'd need a seconder first.
Okay.
Councillors, is anyone prepared to second the motion as on screen? Councillor Friend Pereira.
I'll second.
To assist the mover, is anyone opposed? Councillor Pattis, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do, Chair.
Yeah, you're welcome to speak.
Thank you. Protecting our natural environment, including large trees on private land, is critical and important and comes up again and again in our community surveys. We've been very good, I feel, as a council in trying to protect what we already have to the limits of our powers as a local government. We have not been very good, in my opinion, in supporting the owners of large trees on private land. We want the benefit of our neighbours preserving a large tree, but have not been prepared to help financially maintaining these trees. In fact, at times it feels as if we're shaming some of those owners, especially for trees that were previously not on the significant tree register. This process should be done carefully to recognise legitimate concerns from owners who previously did not have the higher restrictions. There are legitimate and important concerns that have been expressed by the owners of significant and canopy trees. Effectively, these owners provide the amenity to all of us, yet they bear the cost of protecting and maintaining these trees on their own with no financial support by council or from their neighbours. I think there is more that we can do to support the owners of significant trees and canopy trees in our community. We cannot allow these owners to bear the full costs of something which benefits all of us. I'm in favour of rewarding those owners in our community who have significant trees paid for in part by the rest of us who do not have to bear the relevant maintenance costs but still get the environmental benefit of protected trees on private land. So my preference would be that we decide on the support options before we add any more significant trees to our register that are subject to objections. In other words, do we delay the 61 trees being added that have an objection until we've considered support options. So this is natural justice and common sense. It's simply a matter of timing. That's what 3 and 4 does.
Thank you, Councillor Pattis. Councillor Osborne-Smith, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I would, if I may, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Pattis, for your words, and I think...
Councillor Osborne-Smith, just a process point here. Councillor Friend Pereira, as the seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if it may assist Councillor Pattis if we seek an adjournment in order to work those words a little more carefully and perhaps accurately. I understand the thrust of Councillor Pattis's suggestions, and I personally support what he's saying, but I don't feel that the words up on screen there do that justice, and I feel it could be improved should we have the opportunity to adjourn this meeting and get the words right. Or better, I should say.
Happy, Chair, to adjourn. Happy, Chair, to move an adjournment if Councillor Osborne-Smith is going to second it.
Happy to second, thanks.
I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of an adjournment?
Can I speak to the... I was also not in favour of this, but I just want to speak.
Not on a procedural vote, Councillor Nolan. So I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of an adjournment? I declare the motion the adjournment carried. We are now adjourned. Councillor Pattis, are you happy with the amended motion as appears on screen?
Yes, I am, Chair, and happy to speak to it really briefly.
Just quickly, Councillor Friend Pereira, are you happy to continue seconding the motion on screen?
Yes.
Councillor Pattis, as the mover of the motion, I return to you to speak.
Thank you, Chair.
Correction, Councillor Pattis. To assist the mover, is anyone opposed? Councillor Pattis, I return to you as the mover of the motion. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do, Chair, just briefly. I think the motion, as is now written, with the addition of item 3 to the original officer's recommendation, I think it better reflects the intention of this council, I hope. I think we need to recognise that the few people in our community that own very large trees on private land provide a benefit for all of us. Yet they bear all the costs of maintaining this important amenity. And I think we need to address this as a council. We need to, as a council, look at providing support to these people that are providing us with the significant trees and the canopy trees on their private land. And I think item 3 does provide that. It provides us with a report that we can consider options and that we do this before we consider any changes to the significant tree register. So I think I'd like to put that, or I'd like to recommend that to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Pattis. Councillor Friend-Pereira, as the seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion or would you like to reserve your right?
I'll speak briefly. I think this is a good motion. Yes, a good motion. We've got to consider, or at least in my opinion, we've got to consider how the significant tree registry and any potential options that we may want to consider to support owners who have significant trees or their neighbours simultaneously or concurrently.
Now, councillors, noting it is now 10:15 p.m, I invite you all to speak to the motion if you would like. No further councillors wish to speak to the motion, so I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Now, just for our audience here tonight, I do want to explain that this will be coming before a council meeting later on, and the feedback you've provided tonight will be considered and addressed at that council meeting as deemed appropriate by council officers and councillors. Thank you. We now move to items of general business. Councillors, are there any matters of general business? There are none. We now move to matters of urgent business. Councillors, are there any matters of urgent business? There are none. Items of confidential business. Councillors, are there any matters of confidential business? There are none. Before I close the meeting, I want to thank all of you who have joined us here this evening, and I declare the Service Delegated Committee meeting closed.